morning, all, and welcome to the May 9th meeting of the Grosse Pointe Park City Council. It's wonderful to have a full house tonight. We also say hello to those who are watching us online. And with that, I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Present.
Gallagher. Present. Caulfield.
Present.
Wiener.
Present.
Mellon.
Present.
McMillan.
Present.
And Mayor Hodges.
Present, a full house. Moving on to our Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand and face the flag with your right hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is our approval of the consent agenda. Items included on that agenda are the April 11th, 2022 meeting minutes, the committee and commissions report, as well as the finance report. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to review that agenda, colleagues, and if so, a motion would be in order. Motion by Wiener, seconded by Gallagher. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Mellon.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. The next item on our agenda is public comment for agenda items. I would like to just highlight how important this part of the meeting is. We aren't a team without our community joining us and helping to guide us and direct us. So we appreciate your thoughts. For good meeting management purposes, we do limit those comments to 3 minutes. We will do our best to address any immediately handleable issues at that moment. If not, we will be sure to get you in touch with the proper staff members. And on that note, you can always email any of our staff members as well as the City Council at citycouncil@grossepointepark.org. It's very easy to get in touch with us all. And we hope that you will take every opportunity to do that. So with that, I think we're ready to roll. City Manager Seidlin, you have the clock, right?
Yep.
So we will be timing for 3 minutes, and anybody who would like to be heard, you can please make yourself known now. Yes, sir.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Pete Wanderer, 1026 Weyburn Street. The concern that we emailed the council and the president or the mayor about the dismissal of Martin Stillman or the firing. I'd like to know, we would, as a group, would like to know what happened with that. The ramifications or whatever the disposition was. Because Mark was a Grosse Pointe Park police officer and fireman, and he a gate staff for many years, one of our top guys on the midnight shift. So this is what we're worrying about. If we take action on the gate staff and have an incident or an unruly park or what's going to happen there? Are they going to take their side or our side, or do we have backing? And we don't have many, but when we do have it, it's sometimes it could be pretty rough. All right. And also salaries and raises for the gate staff. What we have now is, for decades, they've been low, very low, shameful almost. So the idea is we'd like Chad, last year I went through with Chad and he looked and got on this computer. All the other parks at that time were paying $11 an hour, some more. Now, that's what we would like to have, at least 11, not 20 cents in July per hour. And also green space, we want that kept. And the new zoning director, we want him to come down the Weyburn, Maryland alleys and all the alleys and start writing. But it's bad, it's really bad. I mean, in the past, they've done a couple things and I come down and ask them, we get, and they always fix them. But lately it's gotten out of hand. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for bringing your concerns forward. Anybody else who would like to be heard this evening? Okay, we will close. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Garrett.
sorry. I hadn't planned on speaking. Roger Garrett, 640 Bedford Lane. I'm here with my neighbor because we're continuing concern about the EERB. I've been out of town, but my neighbor just showed me, very happy to see so much attention being given for the downspout disconnection in the communicator. There's, however, one discrepancy here. I don't know if you've noticed it. Mayor Hodges, on the front page, you say that no permit is required to do this. But if you go to page 4, the first point says contact the city building department about completing a building permit. So I think someone needs a little clarification. I don't believe that the permit is required to do that, but if someone reads this, they look by turning them off and getting this done. So it's encouraging to see this, but it's still, everything is based on a voluntary basis. And we are concerned that, does anyone know how this is proceeding? How many people have done this? How many people are going to do it? Is there any way to verify people doing this? And at some point, it seems to me that the city is going to have to step up and say, people, you're going to have to do this because it is the law. So I just want to.
Mr. Garrett, I think that's something we can quickly address. Mr. Seidler, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I can speak to it. And thank you, Mr. Garrett. We appreciate your comments tonight. So with that being said, and there regarding the building permit, that's more for if you're looking to do a complete overhaul of your system. So if you're doing a backflow valve, you're doing a sump pump, then it'd be a building permit would be required. And so that was an oversight on our part that it should just reflect that. But otherwise, if you're looking just to disconnect your downspout from the system, there's no building permit required. The good news of it is that if you're calling our building department for that inquiry, we're passing it along to our DPW department to let them know that you called and you're looking to set up an appointment and such.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Chris Mack. I'm here with my wife, Lisa. I live at 1136 Lake Point. Saw the city's planning a new parking lot right outside here. And while I don't oppose the Performing Arts Center or the parking that's associated with it, I do think that we need to be prioritizing some of the maintenance of some of the existing infrastructure and assets that we have here in the city. And specifically tonight, I want to talk about the alleys in the Cabbage Patch. So the alleys between Alter and Nottingham, between Jefferson and Mack, they serve over 750 residential properties and over 65 businesses. And many of those residential properties are multifamily, so it's more than that. Almost 30 years since I've lived here, the alley behind our place has been service maintained, really only snow removal and occasional patching. So I think that's representative of many of the alleys here. As a result, I think they're a patchwork of pavement. They have potholes, they have manholes that have sunk, so they are effectively potholes. They also have inadequate drainage. They pond, did hold water for days. But I think even more concerning is sometimes they have sinkholes that open up in our alley, the result of the sewers washing out the soil underneath. And so I think that is a safety concern if we don't know when those sinkholes are going to open up and when they're not. So what I would like to do is I'd just like to see if there could be a comprehensive plan put in place to rejuvenate the alleys over a period of time, to address underlying issues as well as the cosmetic issues. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. You are right on time. That's impressive. Your 3 minutes. We appreciate you coming tonight and drawing attention to this important issue. I know the administration is on top of it. And Ms. Mackey, I know we got your email, so there can be some exchange between you and staff. Seeing under Seisler, I believe you were copied on that as well. So thank you. Anybody else before we close the public comment? Great. Thank you again to everybody for sharing your concerns. Moving on to our manager's report and public safety report. City Manager Seisler.
So thank you, Mayor Hodges, members of council and the public. Just a couple updates of what's going on in the community right now. The city master plan met with representatives from MKSK to review and add final comments for June 1st Planning Commission meeting. That June 1st meeting will be the public hearing for the draft master plan. And if the commission approves of the plan, it will then move to City Council for their review and approval at our June 13th City Council meeting. At that time, the city master plan would be adopted. In addition, I'll recommend to the Planning Commission at the June 1st meeting that the appointment of Warren Rothy to take on the city administration duties for the Planning Commission. DPW update, we're still expecting a June 2022 completion on this on the project, and that's going on really well. If you haven't taken a drive-by, certainly take a drive-by on Mack Avenue. It looks really nice and it's coming together well. SEMCOG Green Infrastructure Assessments Project, the city applied for a project at Windmill in Patterson for potential coastal management zone grants. SEMCOG's accepting 12 to 15 winning applicants, and so we're waiting at this time for further instruction from SEMCOG if we've been approved, and we're going to go into a further depth into that grant. As well, the city's applying for a planning assistance program, which would be for stormwater management planning for rain gardens and or bioswales in the DDA district. This is something I discussed at the Downtown Development Authority for helping out of areas, obviously during large storm events, and also beautifying our area, the Downtown Development Authority. Ordinance review. Ordinance review has been very busy. Certainly Mr. Caulfield will talk about later as well, but there's further discussions that will be had on sign ordinance that was introduced later. We're going to continue that conversation and just hear from the community of what they're looking at, and obviously city zoning is going to be very important to looking at with the master plan being adopted very soon. So those are areas we'll be looking at. The Michigan Green Communities Challenge. I know Councilmember Raylan and City Forester Coulter are working on that with the Beautification Commission and Pat Deck and others for statewide sustainability benchmarking. This is something that currently right now I believe because of the silver status, or we're trying to go. Yeah, so we're close. So we're close. We have one more to go at the gold level status, which for a community like ours is really impressive. So hats off to everybody. Back in January, the city applied for Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, which is a think tank that helps communities to find coastal management priorities for projects. And we actually got a response back from them saying that our application is certainly of interest. And so they're going to be visiting with me and Parks and Rec staff to look at the boardwalk area of Patterson Park and also the inland and outward seawalls at Windmill Point. So that was certainly real kudos that we could get this opportunity, and we'll see what happens. The city did receive proposals for city attorney, and the personnel committee will be meeting at a future date to discuss those. As well, the city is in pursuit right now of working with different liability insurance carriers, reviewing our liability insurance, and that'll be something that I'll bring to a future city council meeting for your potential review and approval. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or thoughts.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Relin.
Thank you, City Manager. Just to follow up on the dog park, if there's any update on the repair.
So I know Mr. Craig has been out there. He's talked with me a couple of times, and I know we've exchanged too on, if there's, we'll call it like the little plastic pieces you can put in there to help try and mitigate some of the, dirt in there. And so we're trying to work right now. It's certainly a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have because it means people are using our dog park. They're really busy. They're liking it, but something that we'll continue to work on, Mr. Craig. And I know they're going to bring it up at the Recreation Commission meeting too.
This week?
Yeah, this week. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And then also one more question. Sorry. Is there any update on travel?
So right now I'm still having discussions with the school district right now on what's going to be happening with Trombley. I know there's discussions because of there's our request for proposals that went out for PARD. And so I'm still certainly talking with the superintendent and see what's going to happen, and then keeping us informed, and obviously, how important it is for our community of Trombley and its future use that we want to see in its best use. So we'll keep having those discussions.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilman Gallagher.
Just to follow up on the dog park, yes, a lot of folks are using it, and I think even more would use it if we could figure out a way to make it less money. I spend a lot of time there with three big boots. My question or comment actually is around the city master plan. June 1st is the public hearing, and
Correct.
then we have our council meeting on the 13th.
Correct.
And we have a review and approval within that same time. Please, we could have that as quickly as possible, so we have a sufficient amount of time to review.
Yep.
For questions and or further input.
Absolutely. So MKSK is working on their final comments, so I haven't gotten the final yet. And so we did allow planning commission members a little bit more tweaking. So as soon as that comes back, we'll get it.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving along, Chief Gerald, you're up.
Yep.
So a couple of things I want to talk to you about tonight. Lieutenant Colin Conair and Isha Manning. So I don't know, a month or two ago, I got a flyer in the mail, and it was from the American Lung Association, and they were promoting their Fight for Air climb. And so I just scanned it and sent it out to the guys, and immediately we had a team of 4 that volunteered to participate in the event. The event was held May 1st down at Comerica Park. It included, they got there and they had to be in their full turnout gears, including the SCBA tanks, helmets, boots, jackets, and pants, in excess of 70 pounds worth of extra gear. They started at the street level of Comerica Park, climbed the steps to the upper bowl, and then went up and down every single aisle in the upper bowl for a total of 2,123 steps. Even on the short notice, they were able to raise over $1,500 for the American Lung Association, which was also nice. It's just an example of the type of people that you have serving this community and working for you here. They loved it so much, they were already excited. They're preparing for next year's event. Isha wants to beat the record. So your time was 26 minutes?
Yeah.
And the record time was 13.
13.
So he's got his work cut out. He can do it. So I talked to the mayor and she said that we should bring him in front of the council, and I completely agree. So
Absolutely.
Bravo.
oh, thanks.
Well, it's clear to this community, you can haul any one of us out of a burning building, right? And Lieutenant Conair, aren't you also an asthmatic? And you did that? So testimony to you on.
Important cause for me individually as well. And thank you to everyone who donated.
Well, can they still donate?
They can, yeah. It's on our website. You can click on that link, and that's still ongoing. And we'll definitely hit you up again next year.
Well, and I was a little worried when I saw your picture on the front page of the paper that the camera might have added 10 more pounds to your haul. I hope not.
Yeah, that's all deceptive.
Well, we're very proud
How
of
many
you.
people participated total, you know?
I'm not sure. I do know that they raised, I think just from the Detroit one, they raised over $4 million. I mean, it was a huge turnout.
Yeah, there were hundreds of firefighters. That's awesome. Ours never sat down to take a break, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
This is true. We don't get tired.
And yeah, and so they're looking forward to next year, and going to do a great job for us. So,
Well, and
Chief,
Sergeant Mike Miller as well, Chief. Others as well, right? Sergeant Miller and
yeah,
and
Sergeant
Mr.
Miller,
Evans?
who wasn't able to be here tonight, and Tim
Evans, yes.
Yeah, and he couldn't make it tonight either. There was a team of 4. You have to have a minimum of 3 to do it. We had a team of 4, but I think next year it's going to be actually a bigger team.
Can Mayor Pro Tem do it?
Yes, the mayor can. Actually, they have a separate area, if you will, or a separate category. There were people there that were running it. So they had their numbers on and they were in their running clothes and shoes and stuff, but they were going to run those steps. So you can raise money like that.
You got a year time to get if it. Rebecca will get.
See the wheels turning.
All right, Chief. Sorry, continue.
So next thing I want to bring Michael Bryant. So on Wednesday, May 4th, the Optimist Club awarded several recipients with the, I have to get this right, the Respect for Law commendation. We had 2 submissions and they were both awarded the commendation. Ryan Wilmer, who's my detective, he wasn't able to be here tonight, but Officer Michael Bryant is here. And I want to read you the site that got him the award. So PSO, Public Safety Officer Michael O'Brien has been a member of the Grosse Pointe Park Department of Public Safety for 3 years. During that time, he has built on the expertise in alcohol and drug enforcement that began well before his arrival. PSO O'Brien holds certifications as a drug recognition expert, a Class 3A data master, and a PBT instructor, a ride officer, and a standard field sobriety test instructor. PSO O'Brien has received the MAD Officer of the Year award 5 times since 2015. Since January of 2021, he has self-initiated 25 arrests for alcohol and drug-related offenses, which leads the department. The increased safety to the community due to PSO O'Brien's work in this area of law enforcement cannot be overstated. Although an expert in alcohol and drug enforcement, PSO O'Brien has also received certification as a field training officer, a controlled force instructor, and is a licensed paramedic. PSO O'Brien is a member of the department's youth services unit and has received specialized training as a forensic interviewer. PSO O'Brien's work ethic and constant pursuit of specialized training sets him apart as a leader and unquestioned value to the community that he serves. The Optimist Club Respect for Law Enforcement commendation reads, presented to Officer Michael O'Brien, in sincere appreciation for meritorious service by exhibiting individual respect for law and for fulfilling professional obligations to your fellow citizens and community. Be it known to all persons that this recognition is given with the deepest thanks and gratitude of the members of the Lakeshore Optimist Club of Grosse Pointe on the occasion of their 39th annual Respect for Law program, 4th day of May, 2022.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service. And City Manager Seisland and I had the pleasure of attending the breakfast of the Optimist Club. And at one point we all had to read the Optimist Creed, right? Yes. And I know my favorite was to think only of the best, to work only for the best, and to accept only the best. You obviously all live that creed because you're the best. So thank you for serving our community so well.
Next thing on is everybody's favorite topic, parking. So we've been experiencing parking problems in the Kirchville Business District for ever since I've been here, which is almost a year now. And so we've tried to address some problems with particular businesses who tried to take advantage of our good-natured approach to these things. And I think we're finally reaching a resolution there. Part of it was because we enacted a process where we posted all the city-owned or operated lots as no parking from 3 to 5 a.m. Thankfully, we've had some of the people who live on Weyburn, Maryland, and Lake Point talk to us and tell us some of the concerns and issues that they're having. And it's good because we don't really want right now to have an enforcement campaign where we're ticketing and towing cars. And a good case in point is a fourplex on Maryland right off of Kirchville. There's no parking in front of the house, and it's a bus stop anyhow, so you couldn't park there anyhow. And there's no parking anywhere around the structure in the backyard off of an alley, because they're not off an alley. It's the first house south of Kirchville. It's a fourplex. So conceivably, you could have 8 cars somewhere that need to be parked. Right now, I think they have 4 or 5. But again, there's nowhere to park. So while we're working through the long-term problem and concern about parking throughout the entire city, we established like a grace period. We weren't going to enforce. If we went through there and we ran plates and they belong on those streets, we're not going to enforce it. Well, I know that somebody did get a ticket, and we're going to look into that because the vehicle that got the ticket did register to 1170 Maryland in an apartment. So we know that it registered there. So that's a failure on my part, and I have to do better expressing my desires to the staff, and we're going to take care of that. So I just want to let everybody know that we are working towards a resolution on parking. I'm hoping by the end of summer anyhow that we're going to have some kind of plans in place to address this once and for all. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Questions for our chief?
Thanks for the clarity on that.
Yes, we appreciate that.
No, thanks for your work on the parking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Appreciate
a
it.
lot. And then so finally, the last thing, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the resolution tonight. So May 11th to the 17th is National Police Week. This year, Deputy Director Vostok and I have been invited to go to Washington, D.C. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund has just completed the annual process of engraving the names of officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. And they're engraving those on the marble walls of the memorial. This year, the names of 619 fallen law enforcement officers were added. 472 of those names were officers we lost in the line of duty in 2021. The remaining 147 are the names of officers who fell in years prior and who are now being recognized. And we have one of those that is being added to the wall. And that's why Jim and I were invited to go to Washington, D.C. for the candlelight vigil on May 13th. So we will be attending that. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial now bears the names of 23,229 officers who have made that ultimate sacrifice. I appreciate the thing that you're going to read tonight, I forget what the
Resolution.
The resolution. I appreciate that. I know the officers do. And it's unfortunate that we had to add another name to our memorial wall, but it's also long overdue that he gets recognized. And his name was John Seelock. Lost his life in 1924 and kind of fell through the cracks. So with that, I thank you for your attention. And if anybody has any questions,
Questions? How do my colleagues feel about moving the Police Week resolution up in the agenda and doing it right now?
Second. I would approve that. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we do have a resolution in front of us to adopt this, to establishing the week of May 11th to the 17th as Police Week. And with that, I will read the resolution. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls is National Police Week. Whereas established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States. And whereas we honor the sacrifices made by families of police officers, as each day they must face constant fear as their loved one works to protect us. And whereas in 2021, 614 law enforcement officers were killed serving their communities. The names of these dedicated public servants who made the ultimate sacrifice are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas all police officers who have given their life in the line of duty will never be forgotten. Whereas we pay tribute to the fallen Grosse Pointe Park police officers. And please listen closely to these names. Patrolman John S. Seelock, end of watch, October 6, 1924. Patrolman Claude Lanstra, end of watch, June 1st, 1930. Patrolman Erhard Meyer, end of watch, June 1st, 1930. Sergeant Frank Snee, end of watch, December 13th, 1946. Patrolman Stephen J. Molitor, end of watch, December 12th, 1985. Our communities rely on these courageous individuals, and we are indebted to the selfless public service of our local and state police. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we declare May 11th to the 17th, 2022 as Police Week in the city of Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan. We publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community, as well as those of our state and nation, and honor police who place their lives on the line for the safety and security of their communities. Council, do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the resolution.
Second.
Moved by McMillan, seconded by Rellin. Any discussion? All in favor? I'm sorry. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Keener.
Yes.
Rowland.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Motion carries. We now have a police week. Thank you again, Chief, for the leadership of yourself and your team. You're doing so much to continuously evolve our department. I know your work with community engagement has been significant since your arrival. We're working closely with the Grosse Pointe, Harper Woods, and NAACP. And again, just continuously improving. So thank you very much for that leadership and for all that you do. And thanks to the community for supporting too. I know people like Beth Kurta deserve a shout out, who are keeping you fed. Councilman Wiener, I know you keep them fed as well, which is important. So thank you to the community for all they do to support our force. That takes us back to unfinished business, the OHM sewer update. City Manager Seisland, do we have?
Yeah, Mr. Droz is out of town, so Nancy will give us our update tonight.
Welcome, Nancy.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, so as always, a lot of progress has happened in a month. Jumping right into the sewer inspections from the previous month, we have televised additional 15% of the system, and that's attempting televising. Obviously, we experienced a lot of debris and roofs, so we've had total of complete inspections of 47%, which is an increase of 12% from last month as well. The manholes have still been on hold. There has been some staffing issues and some elements at Pipe Tech, but they're on it and continue to move forward with that. The increase in material deposit has increased from, it was roughly 65%, it's now 80%. So take marking up on the removal of debris from the system. We did find some undocumented structures. So that means, you know, when they're televising in between in the home's backyard, they were able to find some animals. So that's great news for us. We can hopefully get those cleared and able to access them for future inspections. We did meet with Eagle last Wednesday. The intent of that was to give them an update on the EERV as well as just the overall sewer study. We had a great dialogue between talking about downspout disconnections, the EERV design, and future CIP projects. So again, it's always collaborative with people, and they give us input and direction moving forward with the study as well as the EERV design. Jumping into the EERV, Patrick met with a contractor late in April. And if you remember last time, we had two alternatives where one was going by the driveway, the other was going between the two buildings. When we talked to the contractor, it was just going to be more expensive, directional drill, and to be close between two buildings. It was costly compared to additional pipe network and then going to the wet well. So working with contractors and getting that documentation in place. So right now, the recommended alternative is that west of the main driveway instead of doing a directional bore, which is costly and requires more specialized contractors. So you're going to have a limited bid process. So, additionally, the downspout disconnection continues. We're in section 4 out of 5. So last time we were in section 3, we completed section 3. We only had 60 homes that volunteered to be inspected for their downspouts. We're in section 4 till Wednesday, and then we're moving on to section 5, May 16th for a week. So we'll be done with the mailings and voluntary sign up on the 20th of May. As always, we're updating the model and the flow meters. They get inspected on a monthly basis, and we haven't really seen large rainfall events, so we're still seeing, you know, half an inch of rainfall, which is still seems to be that lower trunk is having little flow. So hopefully, not hopefully, I should say, no one wants rain. But we can see the dynamic play into account with the diversions, and we're documenting all of previous inspections and as-built and trying to create this dialogue and historical tracking as we model and understand the flow metering and pipe tax inspections as well. With that, I guess moving forward, finishing the downspout disconnection program and continuously meeting with Eagle. They would prefer more of a regular touch base instead of long meetings, more shorter pace and highlighting certain topics. So yeah, I think that.
Infrastructure Chair Wiener or City Manager Seisler, do you have anything to add before we open it up to questions?
Just make a quick point, as Nancy said too, it was nice dialogue working with Eagle that we had actually about what 2-hour meeting with Eagle. And so, we're going to continue on these meetings, and Nancy said just shorter ones where, we're touching base on a couple of points, and, bidding is going to be going out fairly soon for a couple of these aspects, especially on that pipe. And again, it's just, Eagle is, letting us go through. They want some information as part of the sewer model and hydraulics. And so I really do believe we're moving at a good pace right now and within bureaucracy. So we have to certainly work with the state government in that, but we're pushing them to what we can. And Councilmember Wiener.
No, I mean, I'll just reiterate that Eagle is working much better collaboratively with us. The fact that they're actually actively looking to have more regular meetings is very positive kind of change. And then the other thing with downspout disconnection, I want to keep reiterating this. It's not a singular group that's working on this. So for example, for residents, you don't need to wait for your zone to have a letter go out. DPW, independent of the program, if someone calls the city, calls DPW, they will make an effort to go out there. Again, this is a proactive effort. And again, the notifications, we've got the letters going out, we've got social media trying to communicate this, the communicator. So again, we're trying to disconnect anything we can. So again, don't hesitate to reach out to the city. And I put this out on social media, but I want to reiterate again, this is not a punitive affair. What we are trying to do is get less water into the system. Anything we can do is going to be a benefit on that end. Be aware, and again, I'm a good example of that. I have an older home, and there are going to be some limits of what can and can't be done. The city will not force residents to do something that is either unsafe or economically unfeasible. So for example, I spent a pretty penny on my home trying to disconnect as much as possible, but again, due to safety concerns, there were some areas that I wasn't able to do. But the fact is, there's a lot less water going in. So anything we can do, and again, even if we have to do it incrementally, this is progress. Less water in is less water in. So again, don't be afraid to contact the city. I want to reiterate this over and over again. You're not going to get somebody coming up there and writing you fines. It's a proactive affair. They're going to communicate with you. I just had DPW out of my house again. We just want to see if there's anything else that can be done, and they're doing their best because this is going to benefit the community as a whole. So.
Thank you, Councilman Wiener. And
I think there is a flyer too on the website that's like a how-to, and it has a document of what purchase, like what you need to purchase as well.
I actually talked with a resident this week too. She had been inspected by DPW, and actually she was asking me about whether can I do it was the concrete and newspaper. I said no, you can do that, or you can actually go to Home Depot and buy sewer caps that are plastic and just go right over that cap. So, and that was a good example too of where DPW went out there. There were some challenges certainly with where they'd be able to disconnect it, but she went ahead and is going to try and take out one in addition. So there's another one that come out. So it's the little bit of efforts that are really helping out in this community, as Councilmember Wiener said. And so once we're done with this approach of the voluntary, then DPW is going to be going around to every single house that is not signed up. And that'll be where then we'll be looking, at our ordinance too, obviously after a compliance period that they'll have to downspout disconnect. So we highly encourage, even if you are disconnected, please sign up so we know that you are disconnected. We want to believe you and we will, but at the same time, we need to keep that track record. And we're doing the same with our building department too. When there's inspections and there's rental, CFO, code enforcement, they're all looking for those downspouts too. So
yeah, to that end, it's as simple as to residents, you can pick up your phone and call DPW, you can send an email. Heck, if you send an email to anybody on council, we'll forward it through. What we're trying to do right now is compile and consolidate information. As we've talked about before, residents all have a different way of getting information. So any way you want to send it over to us, we are consolidating that into our own database.
And I encourage everybody to follow Councilman Wiener's updates on social media. They're excellent and keep you informed. And then to end, is everybody ready? You got your
question.
Oh, yes, Councilman Gallagher.
Regarding the flow metering, you talk about the lower sewers. They're not you're waiting for more rain to come so that you can monitor that flow.
Mhm.
Does that have an impact on your final design, and will it stall from getting the final permitting from the state?
No,
No.
no, no, we're working with Eagle in the modeling and calibrated and validated is what we call it. So we're working with Eagle on that exact conversation. And I guess I kind of forgot to say that the St. Monty Felco, St. Clair Monty Felco is intended for construction this summer.
Which is later on our agenda as well.
Yes, okay,
An action
sorry, I
item.
just realized I.
Yep. So it's important to note now as
Yeah,
well.
okay.
Councilmember Rowland?
Thank you, Mayor. There's also another solution, which is like a silicone cap that goes on top of your downspout. I took care of these about a year and a half ago at my house. There's videos, there's a lot of information what Max and Nick was saying. You can reach out to any of us. I know Point Harbor also has some very knowledgeable people there that'll help you get that taken care of. I do have a question for you. So you stated we're at 80% removal of our debris. Is that from an estimate that you gave before we started?
Yes.
Now, was that estimate a normal city estimate for our size, or was that?
I would assume so. I didn't put the bid together, but yeah, compared to other communities that we've televised a handful. So it was an estimate on the miles.
And we're not yet at 50% of the audit, correct? You said 47%.
Yeah, 40%. Oh no, 65.
65. So we're
65.
2/3 the way down.
Yeah, the manholes are at just under 50.
Okay, so we may have to come back to our budget to get some more money for the rest of the debris.
So you're only paying for what they can televise.
Okay.
So they've attempted over 62%, but with the debris, they just under 50%. So there is still budget.
Yeah. And then we've had some rain in the last month or so. Has the system been looking better? I know Max has been saying that, and I've been noticing things as well.
Yeah, so last rain, so we get them at the middle of the month. So last submittal we received was April, early April. So there was some good rainfall that we haven't seen, but we were able to see the GLWA meters, and it's a nice response. So yeah.
So everything's working. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one thing. Just to follow up on Councilman Brennan's comment about the 80%. Do you have an expectation of how much of an increase in budget it's going to be to do the cleanup? We've been working very diligently on the budget.
Yeah.
And see, so if it's going to have an impact, any heads up that you could give as soon as you can.
Yeah, we coordinate with Nick, and we have bi-weekly meetings with Pipe. So.
All right, Council, are you all ready for a moment? Roger, this is for you. We're all disconnected. Are you? So everybody, please, if you're not yet, you must. It's easy. That has been a question on social media about what I'm disconnected from. I promise you it's not my brains. It's just, you know. So we're really trying to make the point that people need to comply. Okay, I think we're through with that item, which will come as welcome news to our families who are here and to our Beautification Commission. Ms. Pat Deck is here to do one of our special things that we get to do each year, which is award our Arbor Day poster winners. I understand she wants me to come forward, and I'm thinking maybe Councilmember Rowland wants to come too, since you're the liaison to the Beautification Commission.
I'll let Ms. Pat Deck do all the talking. I do it.
No.
I'm not sure if you were all able to see these. There's the winner. Nice.
Well, we will show them.
And then there's our two runner-ups.
All right. These are the two runner-ups. There was about 7, but Pat's a stickler, and she said we can only put 2 runner-ups. There was a lot of great ideas.
Well, good evening to Mayor Hodges and all of you residents, and hello to our Arbor Week poster contest winners who've been very patient, because I told them it wasn't going to take all that long. They've been sitting very patiently. My name is Pat Deck, and I have the privilege of representing the Grosse Pointe Park Beautification Commission as chair of the contest. And while I get a chance here, let me ask members of our commission who are here. I see Brian and Lisa, and Cheryl Gauss will be a new member. Cheryl, you stand. And anybody else? And then Vikas is the council representative on our commission. So we're glad to have these members of the commission with us tonight. This is the 39th anniversary of the contest. I think originally I said it was the 38th, but I counted again. It's 39 years. And I've been chairing this committee for about 30 years. So I'm proud to say that in that length of time, we have actually been able to hold their contest all 39 years. And we've had a few challenges from time to time, including some budgetary woes, finding enough volunteers to help us, being actually granted permission by the schools to do it. And then of course, we've had all the challenges of COVID, but in one way or the other, we have conducted the contest all these years. And we are most grateful to the city administration and also to the Grosse Pointe schools, both public and private, for supporting us in this really wonderful project. The poster contest is an integral part of our being recognized as a Tree City USA. And so we've also been a Tree City USA, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, 31 years?
Correct.
That's it, great, okay. The reason we honor trees is because they are so vital, not only to our own personal well-being, but to the well-being of the planet. Arbor Day was first proposed 150 years ago by J. Sterling Morton, who happens to be a native Michigander. And he created the idea of having set aside a day to honor trees. Trees are nature's largest and oldest living things. They give us the air we breathe, the food we eat, shade from the heat of the sun, homes for animals, and the material for homes for us as humans, beauty for the eye, inspiration for the spirit, and a whole lot of other things. It has been said that the best friend on earth of man is the tree. People who, another person said, people who will not sustain trees will live in a world that will not sustain people. So in a little bit of a lighter matter, I want to ask you, do you know how to make an oak tree laugh? Well, you tell it a corny joke. I think you got it. That's one of the things we added to the little instruction packet for the teachers this year were some jokes about trees. Okay, this contest is open to all fourth graders and all students in split classes. And this year we had 134 participants out of a pool of about 179. And that number is a little uncertain because population changes from time to time, but the actual number of posters is 134. We have about an 85% participation rate, which I think is really quite outstanding. And posters were judged by the commission, and the judging is blind because we don't know the names of the students. They're not on the posters. So I'd like to ask Mayor Hodges now and Councilman Vikas Grillan to help us present these awards. The first one, we'd like to ask Maribel Verlinden to come up, please. Look like she's Junior Miss America. Yeah. Welcome. And we're going to ask the mayor to do your certificate, and we will ask Vikas to do the city logo items, and we will ask Maribel to hold her poster and show it to everybody and tell people a little bit about your poster. She's the winner. You stand right at that and show everybody your poster. She had a poster that had both a social message and an environmental message, and her poster had a caption that said, "Trees are like humans, treat them with respect." So what did you mean by all that?
So humans, most humans get a lot of respect in the world, and I feel like trees are very underrated. Like the tree, they keep us air and homes and stuff like that. So I think that they should be treated with respect exactly those two.
Oh, thank you. We'll ask the mayor will present you your certificate and check. Maribel gets a check for $50. Yes. The winner of the contest.
And I will say, I remember the day Maribel was born. And what went through my mind was, that is the most beautiful name ever. And look what she's become, the most beautiful young woman who has such a bright future. And I met your mom and dad doing green stuff, right?
Yes.
Trying to restore the greenhouse at the first. So
Yes.
it's really wonderful to see you all here today. Congratulations, Maribel. And I hope you don't mind the earlier civics lesson. Maybe your teacher will give all of you maybe some extra credit during this, but thank you for coming tonight, Chris Rillen.
Congratulations. You're very inspirational. How old are you? You're 9? 9. It's pretty awesome. We are a great place to raise kids, and you're a great example of that. That's what I want to say. Thank you again. Good job.
And then we have 2 runners up, and the first one we'd like to introduce you to is Annalise Garrison. Okay, Annalise, why don't you face the audience here? Annalise is a student at Deferred, just like Maribel was, and she is a student of Mrs. Rose and Mrs. Bullis. They both teach her grade. And she's another little beautiful American Mrs. Yeah. Bring your poster around and show it to everybody. It's another outstanding poster. It's sort of like a large globe that's divided by this tall, tall tree. And it has the message on the poster, help the future grow. So Annalise, if you can tell us a little bit about your poster and what you wanted to share with people through this artwork.
I wanted to share how trees are being cut down right now and how it's not helping the environment, and in the future area it shows trees are being planted.
Right. So you have to look closely at the poster, but that is exactly what you see. Congratulations. We will.
Another beautiful name, Annalise. Yeah, Maribel should start a club. Huh? Thank you for using your talents to convey a really important message. Keep doing that, right? Congratulations.
Okay, and our second runner-up is a poster by Charlotte Bond, a student of Mrs. Moyer at Mayor School. Oh, by the way, Annalise's, well, it was Maribel's teacher, Mrs. Hartley. Where are you? And then Charlotte is a student of Mrs. Dana Moyer, and Dana is here. So if you would come up, please. Thank you. And just stand there and hold your poster so everyone can see it. Charlotte had a poster with a large single tree, and it had really an interesting texturized crown on the tree. If you feel it, you feel it's just almost like it's, I think it is acrylic paint. And she did a wonderful job with that little paint dots. And she did a bit of a take on a famous quote about when life gives you lemons, but this time she said, when life gives you seeds, plant a tree. So Charlotte, what can you tell us about your poster?
Well, I was taught that you should plant
And I remember, did you, no, that's on this one, it's on this. Okay. Anyway, it's tough planting trees from seeds, but it is possible. And I will say that we give each student who participates in the Arborwood Poster Contest a Michigan White Pine seedling, not a seed, but a seedling plant. So hopefully we got a lot of Michigan White Pines all around here. All right. Congratulations.
So don't ever lose your light, okay? Keep doing good things. And you know what the name of the rowers your family is in? That's the peanut gallery. You can very well behave for a peanut gallery.
Well, thank you for coming. And I'd like to say something special. We're giving Charlotte a Grosse Pointe Park t-shirt, but you know she goes to mayor school and she actually lives in the city. So we're converting this to you. Thank you to all the students and teachers and schools on a job well done. And they're very appreciative of every poster contest participant. We feel like they're all winners, and because we feel that way, we put them on display throughout City Hall, throughout the business community. So I hope while you're here, you get a chance to look around and see some of the delightful posters that we have. Thank you so much for all.
We all really do pat that. Rest of the team. Thank you. We should also thank Councilmember Brenner for helping to lend emphasis to our Arbor Day issues or season as well for the programming that you coordinated, both with DTE as well as Home Solar. There were 2 separate sessions, again, trying to ensure the community has all of the resources it needs to continue to move down that path. So thank you to you for doing that as well. All right, you're more than welcome to stay, but you're also free to leave and go get ice cream as a celebration if you would like.
Mayor, can I go get ice cream?
I was going to say, is that
Behave, Councilmember Brenner. Okay, so moving along on the agenda, we have another very special item here, and that is our resolution in honor of Pride Month. So up for your consideration, Council, is this resolution. We will present that, as well as Councilmember Brenner will provide a brief overview of what we've got planned for Pride Month. We'll then make a special announcement and also introduce you to a special guest. But first, we will get this resolution on the table. Hopefully you all had a chance to review it. I do have a proposed edit, if you all would indulge me, to this resolution that we have before us today, because on this day, May 9th, this is quite significant, Jeffrey Montgomery was born here in Grosse Pointe Park. He was Grosse Pointe Park resident, as well as an alumni of Grosse Pointe South. So a very significant piece of history and heritage that we have here in our community because of all he has done on behalf of the LGBTQ community. So I think it's very appropriate that we acknowledge that history in this resolution as a continuation of what is stated as part of the Stonewall history. So I will read what we have, and then that's what has been shared with you in advance of the meeting, and then insert that amendment and get your feedback on whether or not that is something you would like to see. A resolution recognizing Pride Month in the city of Grosse Pointe Park, whereas the Grosse Pointe Park City Council stands in solidarity with the LGBTQ+ community, and whereas the city of Grosse Pointe Park affirms the rights of all humans to live as their authentic selves, and whereas the Stonewall Inn opened in March 1967 at 53 Christopher Street in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of New York City, and establishments like the Stonewall Inn served as a sanctuary from persecution by police and society at large for members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, as well as homeless and gay youth. And whereas during the time around the opening of the Stonewall Inn, many state and local governments, including New York City, criminalized how LGBTQ+ individuals express their identities and relationships which resulted in LGBTQ plus individuals frequently being harassed by law enforcement, including the New York City Police Department. And whereas in the early morning hours on June 28, 1969, the NYPD raided the Stonewall Inn and arrested many patrons. And whereas brave individuals stood up to injustice the night of June 28, 1969, which sparked an uprising against the NYPD with confrontations and protests at the Stonewall Inn and the surrounding area lasting until July 3rd, 1969. And whereas the Stonewall uprising empowered thousands of LGBTQ plus individuals to come out publicly as they stood up for their community the night of June 28, 1969 and thereafter. And whereas on June 27th to the 28th, 1970, members of the LGBTQ plus community commemorated the first anniversary of Stonewall and reaffirmed the solidarity of the LGBTQ plus community by organizing the first Pride marches and celebrations in New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, and Los Angeles. And whereas the Stonewall uprising is remembered and celebrated every year in June during LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And here's where I would like to insert this edit. Whereas Grosse Pointe Park resident and Grosse Pointe South alumni Jeffrey Montgomery was born on this day, which I think is significant that that works out that way, in 1953 and died on July 18th, 2016. Whereas Jeffrey was inspired by the brutal murder of his partner, Michael, to form the Triangle Foundation, leading to worldwide recognition for the protection of the rights of our LGBTQ plus community, the story of which is now chronicled in the recently released documentary, America, You Kill Me, which was featured as part of the 2022 Freak Film Festival. Whereas the city of Grosse Pointe Park acknowledges and salutes Jeffrey Montgomery posthumously for his many contributions to society. And now going back to what you had before you, whereas the city of Grosse Pointe Park supports the rights of every citizen to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. And whereas in June of 2020, the city council adopted a human rights ordinance to recognize and protect the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. And whereas the city of Grosse Pointe Park accepts and welcomes people of diverse backgrounds and believes a diverse population leads to a more vibrant community. And whereas the LGBTQ plus communities contribute to the cultural, civic, and economic successes of the city of Grosse Pointe Park. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Grosse Pointe Park City Council does hereby proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the city of Grosse Pointe Park, Michigan, and encourages our residents to reflect on the ongoing struggle for equality members of the LGBTQ plus community face and celebrate their contributions that enhance our city. This resolution will be declared adopted if it is approved tonight. And thank you to Mr. Roque for assisting in the creation of this resolution. Is there any discussion? Motion by Rellin.
I'll second.
Second by Caulfield.
We have to add motion to approve, including the amendment. Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah.
So the motion is to approve the resolution as read with the amendment that was read as well. You're okay with that, Councilmember Rellin and Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield?
Absolutely.
All right, so any other discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner?
Yes.
Gallagher? Yes. Caulfield?
Yes.
Wiener?
Yes.
Rowland?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Motion passes. We now have a resolution in honor of Pride Month. Councilmember Brenner, did you want to give an overview of what we have planned for Pride Month?
I would love to thank you, Mayor Hodges. In recognition of Pride Month, City of Grosse Pointe Park, for the first time, is very pleased to announce Pride-themed programming at our Mikulski Theater at Swindle Point Park. During the month of June, we will feature 3 Pride-themed films on Wednesday, June 1st, Wednesday, June 15th, and Wednesday, June 29th, all at 7 o'clock. Lineup and ticketing information will be out this week. These are a couple I's to dot, T's to cross, and I think we can announce one movie just found out as I was coming into the meeting, but we'll get to that in a moment. So lineup ticketing information will be out later this week. In a nutshell, each movie will be free admission. You'll have to pick up tickets at the Gatehouse at Windmill. One of our goals for these events is to have the theater full. So after an initial period where tickets will be available solely to Grosse Pointe Park residents, we will open it up to the broader community. So interested residents, please get out and get your tickets as soon as that information is available. Both the local business and nonprofit community has shown interest in showing their support to Pride in the form of sponsorship of the films. So their sponsorship will cover all the costs of operating theaters and any promotional materials. So in addition to the admission fee free to residents or to whomever picks up a ticket, there will also be no cost to the city. Concessions will be open as usual, so please don't forget to bring lots of popcorn money. Therefore, the city should actually be able to make a small profit on these. We are very pleased as a city to show our support to the LGBTQ+ community, and hope to see you guys down at the Okolsky Theater.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Brenner, for all you're doing. And that special announcement is that we will have the honor of showing America You Kill Me on June 29th at the Okolsky Theater. And so not only should you bring popcorn money, you should bring donation money to support furthering of the film. And we're doing that in partnership with WeGP as well as the Grosse Pointe Park Business Association. So thank you for those two organizations for linking arms with us. Which brings us to our special guest for this evening. I have the honor of introducing to you all John Montgomery, brother of Jeffrey Montgomery. John, you are the architect of the documentary, I believe. Many folks may also know you from Tom's Oyster Bar and Dylan's fame. And really many lament the loss of those wonderful institutions. So you might get tackled on the way out, people begging you to bring them back. But not only were you that, you're also Jeffrey's storyteller. I know one of the stories you told me I found inspiring was what happened on Thanksgiving Day parade and how Jeffrey had to leave your family gathering because he was the PR person for the parade at the time, and Chilly Willy had gone loose, right? And floated away. If you all remember that, I forget what year that was, but that was Jeffrey who was behind that. But you must be so proud to have had him as your sibling, and certainly accept our condolences on his loss. And if you would like to say a word or two, we'd love to have you approach the podium.
I'll give it a shot. One of the producers of the film, America You Kill Me. It's the life story of my brother, Jeffrey. He's a gay activist and warrior. He founded the Triangle Foundation because of a tragedy that happened in his life. Triangle ended up being the fourth largest gay organization in the country, affecting tens of thousands of lives. I got to know Jeffrey even better. I became his caretaker right around the movie. That's when we started the movie, which was in April of 2013. So it's been 9 years in the works. And it's been a labor of love. As Mayor Hodges pointed out, we're in the Free Press Film Festival a couple weeks ago. We got standing ovations at both the Redford Theater and also the Birmingham 8 Theater where the film was shown. It's a great movie. It tells a lot of the history of the gay community, especially in Detroit. So there's like history all through it. It's also trying to make it where it's like almost a primer for activists, show you what it takes to really become an activist and affect thousands of lives. So there's a lot of different levels of going on with the film. America You Kill Me comes from a speech that Jeffrey gave in 2000 at Brown University. It's involved with the Matthew Shepard tragedy. He was the young man that got murdered in Wyoming, tacked up on a fence post in the middle of nowhere. Jeffrey got heavily involved in that trial. Over the years, he came up with a way to get around the gay panic defense, which was a way that defendants could get out of killing a gay person, like saying something like, the guy touched me in the leg. I didn't know what to do, so I killed him. And that would get people off. They would be found not guilty. But he developed a way to get around that. And so a few other gay organizations pooled their money, and he was in the courtroom for the Matthew Shepard trial, all through it, reporting on it. And he taught the attorneys how to get around the gay panic defense. And And although the people were found guilty, were not guilty of first-degree murder, they did get found guilty of second-degree murder, which wouldn't have happened without this. Jenny Jones trial, there's another one that we want to national level. The bottom line is that, as I said before, he took a personal tragedy and turned it into saving thousands of lives.
And who can argue with that, right? Thank you so much for being here, John, and thank you for all your work to advance this cause. And for those of you that want to hear more, we're hoping to put a Q&A panel together as part of the movie as well. So
for after the movie, we should have a panel together for questions and answers.
Great. Thank you again for the opportunity. All right, moving along in the agenda, assuming there were no questions or discussion on that, is our Beautification Commission appointment. The purpose of our Beautification Commission, I'll read very quickly, is to advance beautification and environmental initiatives for the city of Grosse Pointe Park and to acknowledge projects of beautification. We do have a vacancy that was created by Mr. Brad Etheridge. I would like to thank him for his service. I know I really appreciated his viewpoint. He also gave me a mortgage lifter tomato start. I don't know if we've ever heard of a mortgage lifter tomato, but it was really educational to me. And what it means is when they were first launched back in the Depression era, I believe, they sold so quickly, they were so saleable that they could help you pay your mortgage. So a pretty neat thing. And that's, again, one of the things that our Beautification Commission does. So we're sad to see Brad go. It does create, as I said, a vacancy that will expire January 31st, 2024. Our Beautification Commission has all expressed their support for Cheryl Goss, who's also sitting in the peanut gallery tonight. She's up for that consideration. She has a very, very long, interesting tomato history as well that we'll have to convince her to tell us all about someday. But she's clearly well qualified. She has experience with the Junior League Gardeners as a highlight, in addition to many others, and I enthusiastically present her to you all for your consideration tonight as the next member of the Grosse Pointe Park Beautification Commission for a term to expire on January 31st, 2024. Is there a motion? Or Mr. Bellin, did you have anything to add, by the way?
No,
the liaison?
She did show up before we even nominated her, so that was a very telling commitment already. So I do appreciate that. As we know, commissions and committees do take a lot of time to participate in. So the resident involvement is very important to us, and we do appreciate you coming and looking forward to working.
Well, it looks like we might have had a motion by Councilmember Wiener. Is there a second by Rellin? Any discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner?
Yes.
Yellinger?
Yes.
Caulfield?
Yes.
Wiener?
Yes.
Rellin?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges?
Yes. We have a newly appointed member of our Beautification Commission, Cheryl Goss. Thank you for your willingness to serve, Cheryl. I know we'll be in good hands with you. Okay, next is our 2022-2023 budget hearing and approval. It does include a public hearing. One of the most significant actions this body takes in a year is to adopt its budget, which is provided for in the charter. The steps to that end include a workshop, which was conducted on April 28th. We're also required to hold a public hearing, which will occur this evening. And we're also required to adopt our budget by May of this year, which hopefully, if we're successful, will occur this evening as well. Both of these will occur, and along with that, some companion resolutions, namely one that establishes the millage rate, one that establishes the special assessment role, the budget itself, and then Great Lakes Water Authority rates as well will be before this body in the form of a resolution. First up, however, is our public hearing. We do, as I've mentioned earlier, really value the viewpoint of our community. It does improve the end result. I will remind you that if you are interested in speaking this evening, you do have 3 minutes. City Manager Seislin does have the clock set. With that, I would ask anybody who would like to be heard to please alert us to that interest, and please come forward and state your name and your street, if you don't mind. Is there anybody who would like to be heard with regard to the 2022-2023 budget? Yes, Peter.
Yeah. People under 1026 waiver. Yeah, I was told that with the budget, we as the gate staff are not, highly noticed in the budget or recommended. not budgeted for it. Work is downgraded to menial or something. I'm informed that from Chad. Greg. So we'd like to get a little bit more. Good.
Okay, thank you for that input.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we will close the public hearing. City Manager Seisman, I apologize, and Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield, I probably should have asked if you had anything to contribute to that overview, or if you would like to say anything now, or if you want to address the residents' questions. We're certainly free to do that as well.
I'm fine.
Okay.
The question, I would ask the resident and gate staff certainly approach my office and Mr. Craig so we can discuss further.
Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Owen.
Yeah, so as a council, probably the most important thing we do is approve this budget with the work of the city clerk and city manager. So we appreciate all the work you've done for that. But it is probably the most important thing we do. I'm wondering if there's anything that's changed since we looked at this and talked about it 2 weeks ago. I remember I was asking you if the TIFA and DDA budget should come to us after they approve it, or has anything changed in those budgets?
So Clerk Blayhut or Finance Director Blayhut, there was a couple changes made that we reflected in the capital improvements that was sent to council. There's a couple line items that we actually subtracted and then added to. And then otherwise, the DDA and TIFA, those budgets as presented to the DDA and TIFA boards were adopted by those bodies. So they're here tonight, and then it's up to city council to approve their budgets.
It's a matter of semantics. They were approved, then it comes the DDA and TIFA budgets approved at that level. They come here for approval, and then it can be adopted by.
Okay, so I did have some questions about, I think it was the TIFA budget with the DPW costs. Are those still in the TIFA budget?
In regards to the
$100,000 or so.
So in the current fiscal year we're in right now, not this budget, there is, for security system, about 100,000, 30, 35. So yes, those are in there. If you're talking about the upcoming fiscal year, is there line items in there? Just the installment purchase contract, which is the actual down payment for the bond. That'll be till about, I think it's 2036. That's about 300,000. That number will go down every year for paying off the $4 million bond.
Yeah, so wasn't there two items that I questioned last time in the TIFA budget about the DPW, the lift station, or?
So, oh yes, so there were two items in there that we looked at. There was a mobile lift, which is to assist, putting the vehicles up and such, and then as well there was thank you, Mayor Hodges. Yeah, I had it in my head. But then the fuel system for DPW, so those were taken out of the TIFA budget, and so that's not in there anymore.
Yeah, the fuel system. So the budget we're approving, we haven't seen. There's changes. We weren't made aware of any changes. So we're approving a budget. We haven't seen any of the changes. So I'm a little uncomfortable approving a budget when we don't have the accurate line items involved. Does that make sense?
So you're saying because this mobile lift and the fuel system are not in the budget now compared to the one you're seeing.
Is that what you're saying? Has changed,
right?
But we're approving it, but we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Are you guys comfortable approving a budget?
No. Just to clarify, so we have fuel system at DPW and the mobile lift at DPW. Those are the two items in question.
Correct.
Yeah, the entire TIFA budget's in question, but those two were removed.
Well, but they were removed, the 65 and the 50?
Those were removed.
That's what Nick just said.
All right.
Are those the only changes, City Manager Seisman?
Yeah, those were the only changes made. We took out the mobile lift and the fuel system.
Okay, so it'll be up to this body to decide if it's comfortable with moving forward with that, but I think that's clear.
To follow up on that, did that money get appointed anywhere else or allotted anywhere else?
So we're actually going to put that money into the water sewer fund for those payments because that's part of DPW expenses as well. There was an auction that we had of DPW materials that we were doing this for help that there's so much excess in the building in current that as part of those sales we could use, for buying the extra equipment, which actually with these two line items right now, we'll be able to pay for that out of those proceeds from the auction.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's. And then the second question I have is the DDA is still fronting money for the parking lot in front of Ewald Library.
That's correct. They approved $45,000.
And we still have our current city hall parking lots in shambles. And we've all said infrastructure is our #1 priority. I'm wondering why we're allowing money to be spent on a future project when our current infrastructure is our priority and we need help there.
So really the difference with those two, you've got two areas. You have the DDA, which is, their monies for that project, and then the other monies for infrastructure improvements. We can use that out of water sewer funds. We can use that for the road projects. And so, what we have to balance is obviously what are those priorities, which we've all discussed as infrastructure. From those road dollars that we're looking at, obviously, the local and the major streets, approve those for the alleys. It's something we can focus on. We could also use that for the city hall parking lot as an example. The DDA, if they wanted to, could have done the parking lot. However, they elected to, as part of their budget, setting aside more money for that parking lot, which will be built in about two fiscal years from now. In addition to, there's also a agreement that was done with the Urban Renewal Initiative Foundation that there's a contractual obligation that the DDA is entered into, and they passed that in November, where we'll get another 200,000. So what the DDA is trying to do is add, obviously that cost, the budget for that when we do build that parking lot, we have ample funds for.
And who's the director of the DDA?
I am the director of the DDA.
So you create that budget for them.
That's
but
correct.
You keep saying them and us when it's actually just you.
That's not correct.
DDA
approved
it, but who presented it?
By statute, the director presents it, the DDA approves it.
And who created it?
I assume the director, because he's required to.
That's what I'm saying too. Yep. And point of order, we'll ask for your opinion when we're ready for it.
Well, if you make an incorrect statement.
Right, thank you.
So I didn't make an incorrect statement. He created the budget, is what I said.
He didn't approve it, the DDA.
I didn't say anything about approval. I said create.
Okay.
So you created that budget when we could have used that money at our city hall park. And that's what I'm wondering. Why are we putting funds towards a parking lot for a project that isn't happening yet? When we could be creating and taking care of things that our residents use. The #1 thing we do is how do we spend our money for our residents? And that's a pretty good important thing to do. Our city hall parking lot has been in shambles before I started coming to meetings. So that's what I'm trying to say. If you're the director of that, you should be pushing that funds forward. So I'm not going to be able to approve this budget as is, simply because I don't think we're using our residents' money in the best interest of our residents.
I respect that.
Could we I think there is one important point to clarify, City Attorney Howlett, perhaps you should do that, is the fact that the DDA is legally obligated to that expenditure.
They are. They entered into the MOU with the Scott Center that had a commitment to develop that parking lot and to pay for that parking lot out of DDA funds and then eventually get reimbursed up to $200,000 upon.
So you had an obligation to incorporate that into the budget for approval this
Right.
evening. Now, the City Hall parking lot's a whole other issue and trying to figure that out somewhere else, but it's not as if you could redirect the dollars that are going to the parking lot.
That's correct.
Or to the stop center, or to the City Hall parking lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think you know what I'm trying to say.
And to balance really, the discussion too, and I know there's certain members of the community, they brought up some great suggestions too, is that if, this parking lot is built, we don't want this just to be a blacktop parking lot. This has got to be something that we look at a holistic approach. That it can be a sustainable parking lot. It can be something that we can use for residents and those in the community that would like to use in the future. And so if we're going to build this, certainly, and the DDA is elected to as well, that we're really going to make this something that's attractive, and certainly keeping in mind residents at the condo association and others that are entering by our community that, this will be an asset to the DDA district.
Okay.
Question on clarity. When was that MOU adopted by the DDA? Approved, do you remember?
November of 2021.
2021. And that was just the DDA that approved that?
That was just the Downtown Development Authority.
I wanted to continue on. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So we did get 50 letters in opposition of this parking lot as well. I think that's something to take into account when we're trying to approve this budget, which is going to take away the green space in front of the library to build a parking lot for a project that hasn't started yet. It may not even happen. So I'm wondering how we as a council can do that when 50 residents have emailed us to take a step back and look at what we're getting rid of.
City Attorney Howlett, could you speak to the fact that we are legally obligated and we don't have that?
Yeah,
that's what contracts are for.
It's a legal obligation. It's you aren't like obligated to approve the budget. If you don't, it would likely put the DDA into breach of contract. If they can't pay for the parking lot that they've committed to build, they now have a contractual breach with the URIF based on the agreement that the DDA lawfully entered into.
So a question on that.
Yes.
What is the city getting from this MOU? Or are we just giving them parking lot?
Well, the DDA is getting 200,000 for the help with that project.
We're not getting anything, we're paying more than 200,000. The parking lot's gonna cost 500 grand.
It's a development agreement. The Downtown Development Authority's job is to help develop the downtown area. And so it's a very common practice. They've entered into an agreement with a group that's proposing a $30 or $35 million development. And one of the quid pro quos, as it were in that contract, is that we would, the DDA, when I say we, the DDA would develop the parking lot on its property in exchange for helping bring that development to the forgot the direction, but next door.
And just making sure the facts at the table, it is not a $500,000 parking lot, correct?
Yeah, there's no estimate right now.
Well, we're it's gonna cost it. What's your guess? What's your guess?
We're not here.
Okay, so
Okay, good.
Councilwoman Wiener, is it directly related to this? Because Councilwoman Gallagher was first.
Should we go first?
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor Hodges. So speaking to the memorandum of understanding that was entered into with DDA and the budget questions, my question is regarding this memorandum of understanding that you're asking us to enter into today with St. Clair. I don't, maybe you can help me find it. I don't see this commitment on the budget, but we will be entering into a financial commitment with this MOU in the same way. And so I'm wondering if this is already on the budget.
I can discuss that further when we get to the MOU, but in essence, on our water sewer fund.
Is it in this?
It as a capital improvement, but there's monies in the water sewer fund that we be able to appropriate towards that.
Anything else?
No, but when we get there, I'll ask other questions, but I just thought
Okay,
great to ask here.
I want to make a quick point. The DDA is comprised of appointed personnel. They set a budget they present to us. I don't see, it's not our place as the council to sit there and micromanage what the DDA is presented to us. We are doing a vote now on our budget. Secondary, you're talking about the alleyways. You've seen the updates. The Pazer map is now, we've allocated funding for road work. The Pazer map is now out there. We are now figuring out how the city's going to allocate it. But that's a side issue. This is not like we are pulling out of that pot for that. So it's two separate entities. And then third, we just wanted to make accurate representations. To say we got 50 individual letters is not correct. A petition with signatures is not saying it's 50 individual letters. So again, I want to make sure we're representing this accurately.
Is that correct? Or did we get 50 letters?
I have not.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
I thought it was a stack of 50 letters.
No.
No, that was
Petition.
that was
Circulated
the-
petition.
that was a circulated decision.
I didn't see
Oh.
anything. Did you see anything?
Y'all got it in the mail? Yeah, I saw
There's
some
some
signatures signed on
signatures.
behalf of, which, I mean,
Again, I don't want to believe
yeah, I don't want to believe.
Either way, okay. Any other discussion on the budget? Yes.
I'm sorry, just to be like crystal clear, because Councilmember Rowland makes what sounds like a very reasonable point. If we're not going to be spending this, is it 45,000?
45,000.
Or DDA is not going to be spending 45,000 for the parking lot for 2 more years. We are yet contractually obligated to have it in this forthcoming budget, despite the fact that we are not going to be spending it for 2 more years. I mean, it just seems if we have the money.
You're not.
Can I?
Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, there's not a contractual obligation that it be in this budget in the manner. There's a contractual obligation to build the parking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And I think what the budget was, and I don't mean to put words in the people that actually put the budget together because the city attorney does not do that. But it's an allocation, a buildup of those funds so that when construction does begin, it's not an immediate charge. It's built into the budget over the course of time to put in.
Just-
The obligations to build the parking lot, how it's budgeted for is.
We're
up
just
to you.
being very careful.
Well, it's up
with
to
our
the
future
DDA.
planning,
So
essentially.
we were thinking ahead.
Okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Shocking.
That's,
About time.
I'm
Doesn't
sorry,
sound like
sir,
they
we
were
can't
thinking
take
ahead
any
of me.
comments from the floor at this time. Any other discussion on the budget?
I just wanted to add to Tom's comment. That's a good point, thinking ahead, but it doesn't sound like they were thinking ahead when they got into that.
Well, that's why I asked when it was approved.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money here, so yeah, just ask.
Okay, so we do have 4 resolutions in front of us. Does the order matter?
And they're set up, they're numbered, the resolutions are numbered.
Oh, they are, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't
I only
catch
have
that.
3 in
All
my
right, 3,
packet.
yes,
I don't
you're
know if I'm
correct,
missing
3.
Yeah, it was.
No, I'm sorry, there's 4. Oh, yes,
Yeah,
the
but
Great
there's-
Lakes Water
I think there's
Authority
four,
rates.
but is there a three? I don't have a three.
Yes,
Is
okay, so I'll just read the,
Yeah,
so
there's a
there's resolution number one,
Three is the budget.
which is the setting the millage rate, resolution number 2, which is the special assessment role, resolution number 3, which is the budget itself, and resolution number 4, which is the water rates. So we will start with resolution number 1, which I will read and then accept a motion. Resolved that in accordance with PA 5 of 1982, requiring the governing body to establish the millage rate required to balance the 2022-23 fiscal year budget, and in accordance with section 8.4 of the City of Grosse Pointe Park Charter, it is hereby determined that the millage rate for general operating purposes for the fiscal year 2022-23 year be 16.4873 or 16.4873 per $1,000 of taxable value. Comprising that is 10.5917 mils for general operating, 1.5679 mils for rubbish disposal, 0.0710 mils for communication fees, 0.7300 mils for bond issues, 0.9571 mils for roads, and lastly, 2.5696 mils for public safety. Is there a motion to approve this resolution number 1?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Wiener, seconded by Gallagher. Any further discussion? Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher. Yes. Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Mellon.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Motion carries. We have resolution number 1, establishing the establishing the millage rates approved. Second resolution is the special assessment role. Whereas in accordance with section 20.12 of the City of Grosse Pointe Park City Code, whereby when any expense shall have been incurred by the city in respect to any single premise and subsequently such expense remain unpaid, and whereas such premises have been advised that such unpaid bills will be placed as a lien against each property, a lien against such property, plus 15% service charge if not paid by a certain date. Be it resolved that a special assessment role for delinquent bills for water and miscellaneous items be placed upon the property described in the exhibits as presented, copies of which are on file in the city clerk's office and are a part of these minutes, in the respective amounts set forth opposite said properties in said exhibits, including a service charge of 15% for placing the bills for water and miscellaneous items on the special assessment roll, and that special assessment shall be due and payable at the time 2022 city taxes are next due and payable with respect to such property. Is there a motion for this resolution?
Make a motion.
Motion, I'm sorry, was it
Motion
Mr.
to
McMillan?
accept, yeah.
Councilmember McMillan,
Seconded.
seconded by Wiener. Clerk, or excuse me, any additional discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher. Yes. Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Mellon.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Thank you. Resolution number 2, approving the special assessment role, is now approved. Resolution number 3 is the budget document itself. I will not read each line item, but I will read the opening paragraph, which is resolved that having published proper notices and held a public hearing for the budgets of the following funds for the fiscal year 2022-23, such budgets are hereby adopted in the amount set forth and purpose intended, along with increases in related revenue sources. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Wiener, seconded by Gallagher. Any discussion? Clerk, can you please
One
call
quick
the?
question, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr.
So
Vethel.
there's no other changes in that TIFA budget?
Could you cite what your
Alley improvements?
alley improvements in reference to from what it was to what it is
talked
now?
about, we were showing
Yeah.
$30,000 budget for that. That's still accurate?
Yeah, there was $15,000 that was reduced in that, and so that was discussed at the TIFA meeting, that there's a $15,000 reduction.
Okay, so that was reduced as well. Another thing that affects our TIFA residents as well. So I just want to emphasize that I don't think we're doing our TIFA residents or our GDA residents justice by this budget. Thank you.
Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Mellon.
No.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We have a budget adopted for fiscal year 22-23. Moving on to our final resolution of the evening, which is relative to water rates. I will read it. Resolution number 4. Whereas the Great Lakes Water Authority has raised rates and with having published proper notices and held a public hearing for water sewer rate increases. Now therefore be it resolved that the following flat rate for Great Lakes Water Authority charge of $61.34 remain the same. Now therefore be it resolved the following flat rate for sewer service charges of $66.90 be increased to $71.96. Now therefore be it resolved the water flow rate charge of $3.80 remain the same. Now therefore be it resolved a capital project cost of $7.50 remain the same. Is there a motion approving this resolution as read?
Motion approved.
Moved by Wiener, seconded by Gallagher. Any discussion?
Just point of clarity, you did read the resolution about the increase, sorry. Flow rate, flat rate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No problem at all. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner?
Yes.
Gallagher?
Yes.
Caulfield?
Yes.
Wiener?
Yes.
Rowland?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Resolution number 4, approving water rates, is now approved. I believe we are ready to move on in the agenda. Anybody has anything further to add? Okay, that takes us to the Scott Theater replacement, HVAC replacement. Is that you, Superintendent Sizer,
Yes,
that will lead
myself.
us in that discussion? Great.
Yeah, so I asked Director Craig to provide me some information that there is a proposed HVAC replacement over at the Scott Center, Scott Theater. So the heat exchanger on the 10-ton HVAC unit heats and cools Scott Theater broke and needs to be replaced. The heat exchanger is under warranty. Unfortunately, Daikin no longer manufactures some of the components for the heat exchanger, essentially forcing our warranty to be null and void. And so Parks and Rec is working with Ainsworth Incorporated, who also works on city hall facilities and public safety, to replace the existing unit with a brand new unit. Ainsworth will lock out the unit, reclaim refrigerant, disconnect all electrical, use a crane to remove the existing unit and such. They'll also furnish and install new drain lines and thermostats to start and test the new unit. The cost is approximately about $22,511. Ainsworth has agreed to 4 installments of about $5,600 from May through August of 2022, 2 payments from the current fiscal year and 2 payments in the following fiscal year. Working with Mr. Craig, they are going to try and salvage some of the Freon currently that is in the unit right now. And Ainsworth was able to convert the unit over to strictly AC for the first time being until we get the new unit in. So just as a temporary, they were able to have it for a little bit before, you know, it permanently dies. So there's a little bit of help there, because certainly something that we didn't expect, you know, we would have a warranty on this, that we get the parts, but the company no longer manufacture those parts. So we're challenged with getting a new unit. So with Mr. Craig, I recommend we purchase this unit so that we get time for the theater. There's about a lead time of 3 to 4 weeks to receive the unit, have it installed. And we're looking at probably, you know, in June or July that we'll have this. So obviously due to supplier issues and such, it's hard to determine right now. So I would recommend upon Mr. Craig's recommendation that the city council approve the purchase of this replacement unit.
Would anybody like to get the item on in the form of a motion, and then we can discuss?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the HVAC replacement.
Moved by McMillan, seconded by Rowland. Discussion.
I just want to follow up. City Manager Seisel and I had a conversation about this. Unfortunately, we're in a issue with the warranty, but so we're going to do what we can to try to recoup what we can from the system, and hopefully recoup some money if we auction and salvage what we can off of it. Unfortunately, it's a situation we don't want to be in, but we'll do the best we can, but we don't want to be unable to use the theater. So. How old is this? Sorry.
Yeah.
Councilman Rowland.
How old is that AC?
It's let's see, the Scott Theater was built in, Jane, was it 2013? 13, so around that.
Mayor Pro Tem Caulfield.
Yeah, it's just, we do have obviously preventative maintenance issues going forward. So that's, that's, you know, all these things do need to be serviced over time. Just, I don't like surprises as anybody else. So just hopefully we can maintain the. Sorry.
The problem right now is getting, I know. Currently buying chillers, the industrial chillers, it's very difficult to get anything right now. but
Yeah,
this is in line with roughly what you're looking at for a 10-ton, so.
and it's something that we do have our city electrician, Mike Cross. He goes out to obviously surveys our city hall, our public works facilities, parks and rec, if there's any question on electrical, and tries to give it heads up in the case. And this was one that we did not expect that happened to us. Was there late? It's a good point. That's our call.
Yeah.
I'm
just wondering, even on insurance wise too, from a disruption, might be something to look at.
Yeah.
Okay, just to be very clear, this is the Scott Theater, not the Art Center.
Yes, Scott.
All
I
right.
said theater, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I just want to make sure the community
Yeah.
knows, because
Yeah.
it can easily get
Yeah.
confused. Is there any other discussion regarding the motion to approve an expenditure of $22,511 to replace the HVAC equipment at the Scott Theater?
One quick
Yes,
question.
Mr.
Is there
Allen.
any chance it could be flood damage related? Was it working after the flood?
It was,
End of the summer?
yeah, it was working.
Shouldn't ask.
Okay, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner,
Yes.
Gallagher, Caulfield,
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Mellon.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We will have new HVAC equipment as a result of the approval of that purchase. Moving forward to vegetation ordinance number 230, Mr. Rothy, this is your coming out party. Welcome to the podium. We look forward to hearing what you have to say about the ordinance that's proposed.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Hodges and members of the City Council. This is my first week as the TIPA Director. I was appointed last week, and it's my 5th week as your Assistant City Manager here. I'm very excited to be in this community. It's been very welcoming. I've enjoyed exploring. I've spent a lot of time going up and down the alleys. Definitely recognize there's a lot of work to be there. Definitely would like to improve those during my tenure here. Before you this evening, though, one of my first focuses has been ordinance creation, specifically a Chapter 24 vegetation amendment, known as the tree ordinance, and then the demolition ordinance, which is our next item on the agenda. First, we're going to talk about Chapter 24 vegetation. The current code, Chapter 24, had 3 components: trees, noxious weeds, and living fences. With the recent living fence amendment, that language was moved into the zoning ordinance, leaving noxious weeds and trees. The noxious weed language has been unchanged, so the only amended language in this ordinance is concerning trees. There's a few big changes, and I also think it's important to mention that this is our city forester, Brian Coulter. He's with me this evening. He and I worked hand in hand on drafting this ordinance with the city attorney. I also think it's one of the things I'm most proud of with this ordinance is it actually references the fact that we have a city forester. Right now, Brian's title is not included in the existing code. It's just referred to as the Director of the Public Services. So again, I think that's important that Brian's role and authority be recognized in our city code. There's also some new language that governs planting trees, removing trees, and trimming trees in public areas, which again, basically right of way. This isn't governing trees on private property, primarily just those that are under the city's control. And it does impose a new standard for this minimum tree size at the time of planting in, again, the public area. So again, City Forester and I are here to answer any questions, City Attorney as well. The Ordinance Committee reviewed this, and we recommend that you adopt as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Rothy, Mr. Coulter. Would anybody like to get the matter on the table by motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Rellen. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Wiener to adopt vegetation ordinance number 230 as presented. Is there any discussion? Yes, Mr. Rellen.
Thanks, Mayor. First of all, congratulations, Brian. You're an amazing person to work with. And if you have never talked to Brian, I suggest giving him a phone call, have him come to your house and talk to you about your trees. He's one of those people that will always teach you something about all the trees that are on our property. So thank you and congratulations on being identified in here. One question is, who will enforce these rules? Mainly 24.12-1 is 12-foot minimum height above the curb and 8 feet above the sidewalk. Nothing tense. I'm just wondering. Because if you drive around, you'll see that many trees are below that 12-foot level with the curb.
Yeah, well, we updated it.
Yeah, no, that's what it says. So we're going to start. Are we just going to give the notice to the residents saying, hey, your trees are too low, can you trim them up? Or will you be going around trimming them as you drive by?
I can speak and you guys can fill in. Basically, we're giving that, it's really to make sure that the city has the right to trim those, because there's always been like a clarity of whether it's the resident and or the city.
Yeah.
If it's in the easement, that's city, we have every right to trim it to those property lines.
And we will for free.
Well, that was well said, but we also have the avenue where our code enforcement officer can cite them and find the homeowner for not maintaining it clear.
The first citation isn't going to be a fine, right? So it's just a warning.
No.
Okay.
No.
I want to make sure that's good. I didn't see that anywhere.
Right.
So I want to make sure. And then that's great if we're going to start taking care of those, because that leads to stop signs being blocked as well. That was my next question.
We want to prevent that.
Yeah, last year we asked some residents to drive, if they see a stop sign that's blocked, so they can email anyone here and we can get it to you to block that. I don't know if you'll be driving around checking stop signs.
Well, I remember that last year, and we cleared every stop sign there.
Yeah, and even ones that fell through or grew later.
Right.
Yeah, so I really appreciate all the work you do. And
so that's very important.
Thank you.
Maintain line of sight. Prevent blockage of stop signs.
Everything's growing in the summer, so
right, correct. It's a constant thing.
Well, thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Coffey, I should have given you the floor earlier. You as chair of the ordinance committee, do you have anything further to add to this?
This is good. I mean, no, really, this is what we talked about, and it's important, and it affects a lot of things, not only sight lines, but stop signs and traffic crossings. You name it. It's also there's around my neighborhood, there is sometimes you have to duck just to walk down the sidewalk. So it's important that we take care of this. It's been overlooked for many years, and it's about time.
Great, thank you.
Also want to point out for our new members of council, if you haven't noticed, Brian's actually wearing a wooden tie. If you did not know, that is something he's been so yeah.
You didn't believe he was a forester before, you do now, right? Any other discussion? Okay, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brenner?
Yes.
Yeah. Caulfield?
Yes.
Senior?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges?
Yes, motion carries. We have a new ordinance number 230, chapter 24, vegetation. Thank you very much, team. Okay, moving along to demolition ordinance number 231. You're up again, Mr. Rothie?
Yes.
Great.
Second ordinance this evening is a ordinance governing the demolition of large structures within the city limits, specifically any structure that is 10,000 square feet or larger. This ordinance largely codifies existing building department practices regarding demolitions. Specific requirements that are applicable to large structures include proof of liability insurance, posting of a construction bond, as well as advanced notice requirements to nearby property owners who are within 300 feet of the demolition site, and notice of 72 hours. The remainder of the ordinance language largely focuses on specific standards of demolition, such as disconnection of utilities, foundation raising, and backfilling. The city's attorney's office and the city administrator's office believe that this ordinance puts the onus of responsibility in governing the demolition permits, taking an applicant from start to finish in the hands of the building official, who is, in our case, is Terry Brennan, who is licensed by the state of Michigan to be our building official. So he is the agent who would be responsible for the enforcement of this ordinance. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions you have. If members of the ordinance committee would like to speak as well, or the city attorney, feel free.
Mayor Pro Tem Coffey?
Yeah, just a great introduction. I just an overview. It's really, this is when any larger building, because now we do have a lot of ordinance rules and regulations about fencing and protecting neighbors. This would be if any large structure were to come down. It's an addition, and Terry was very good at bringing this to our attention that we should be asking for those 3 bullet points. There is, with larger building structures, there's potential for a lot more damage to surrounding areas. It's also, they will have to bond this out to make sure that we basically hold them in approval until it's done and we give their bond money back. And again, more advanced notice and just letting people know around the area that this is coming down. So that's really the crux of it, in addition to what we have.
Great, so another really solid evolution. Councilman Gallagher?
In regards to the ordinance, the city attorney has done a good job in codifying the existing building department practices in this ordinance, thereby establishing consistent and neutral applied policies. Further, the ordinance offers additional protections to public health and safety identify further required steps to notify neighbors, providing proof of insurance bonds, proof of liability insurance, etc. And to set forth best technical practices for such large demolitions to ensure the safety of the community and to minimize impacts to residents. To your point, Tom, during the ordinance committee meeting, Mr. Terry Brennan, Grosse Pointe Park's building inspector, spent quite a bit of time describing the process and the procedures to issuing a building demo permit. He shared with us details of how our neighboring communities approach such demo permits. During this discussion, Mr. Brennan explained how the farms go one step further to protect their community. That process goes something like this. When a resident or business submits an application for demolition permit, that address is provided to the historical committee for review. The purpose of this is to ensure that the further protection surrounding any historical asset of the community. The specific example that Mr. Brennan gave was a building in the farms that owners wanted to demo. By passing the application through the historical committee, the committee was aware of the desire to demo the building, which gave the opportunity for the owner of the building and the committee to work together to create an archaeological archive of the demolition in order to protect the historical significance of the building. It's kind of apropos. I think it's really interesting. We talked a lot about history and heritage today when you're passing a resolution regarding LGBT communities. And you mentioned Jeffrey Montgomery, and this is a historical figure from this community in here. And we have quite a lot of historical figures within our community, and the importance of protecting that history, protecting that heritage. So while I'm not suggesting that we create a historical committee to review all demolition requests in the park, I would suggest that this council consider its responsibility to protect the historical assets in our community. As such, I would like to make a motion to amend the current draft of this ordinance to include a sentence that reads, in any case where such a structure is older than 75 years, prior to any permit approval by the building department, such permit requests shall be referred to the council, the city council, for input. With that, I would ask for a second.
I'll second that.
Motion by Gallagher, seconded by McMillan to amend the proposed ordinance to include any structures older than 75 years must come before city council for review.
For council input.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 231 as presented with the amendment.
Well, I think we have to entertain this motion.
Right. So it's still two steps.
So is there any discussion regarding this item?
I'm not sure. I don't really see it as a legal matter, but rather an obligation by the elected officials, us, this body, to protect the community and the assets of our community.
I'm sorry, I have a major reservation with amending to that end right now. I can see upside of it, but there's going to be unintended consequences of that. There's going to be legal ramifications, and creating a body with city council is going to micromanage pieces of property throughout the city. I think we need to flesh this out before we make a motion to vote on that tonight. That's too big of a shift in control to the city council for private property.
For input and consideration, not to micromanage. It's just to make sure that anything that's passing through.
Yes, Councilman.
At the meeting, I remember, what was the gentleman's name again?
Brennan.
Terry Brennan was saying that the historical value, sometimes somebody would take property and donate it to the city, plans and other things that instead of just tearing something down, it would give us a chance, meaning maybe our mayor could set up a committee to go look at it, to go through it before something gets torn down. I think it makes good sense for historical value.
And if I may,
please, because I see both sides.
Yeah, and it's not a legal matter in the sense that I'm not going to give advice that you can't put something like that in. I do think there are potential legal ramifications. Councilmember Wiener raised some of those, and I think based on some of the discussions we've had, and this demo ordinance has been a long time coming. it's been some really, really good work with the ordinance committee. I think this product, from a legal perspective, is intended to do exactly what it does, which is to codify the process, right? The insurance requirements, demolition plans, and to really hone in on sort of the physical and actual process of demoing something of that size, which really is a building department matter. I think Council Member Gallagher's comments, though, are very well taken. It would be my perspective that they should be addressed, but maybe not in this specific ordinance. There are other avenues to address it. The way the Farms did it, I think, is very interesting. And so it's not that I don't think the council, or that there's a legal impediment to the council having an impact on private property and making some decisions based on a litany of factors. I do get concerned with certain ordinances like this that are more technical in nature, that if you're bringing those to council approvals, where do we stop? In other words, where does the council draw the line in terms of certain ordinances? You know, is it going to have to go for council approval what trees we trim? Is it going to have to go for council approval the other things that we enforce? And obviously this is, you know, it's typical law school, right? Those may be extreme examples, but there is a progression of how we're going to handle the ordinances going forward and what qualifications we put on. And then one thing we'll have to be extremely careful of, no matter how this council decides to move forward with it, is to make sure that that process that council engages in is very intentional and thorough, so that it's not an arbitrary pick the winner kind of issue where you've got members of the community saying, well, you let them do this, but you didn't let me do this because you like these guys and you don't like these guys. Those are the kind of decisions that do have a legal ramification that in the future I would be concerned about. I don't have a concern about the council having input on these projects, but I think just based on what we've had discussions of, the intention of this particular ordinance was as a technical roadmap for developers who are seeking to demolish buildings. So that's the city attorney.
So just that I'm clear, so you don't have an issue that it's for the council to have input on this particular ordinance and a review. So there is no legal issue for this.
I would say that there's not a legal impediment, but I would have concerns that if the council had that authority and chose to exercise it, that could create legal issues in the future.
There's no reason we can't come back and flesh something out and do it at a later date.
Yeah, can we table? I mean, it sounds like there are pretty significant pluses and minuses if you start to think it out. And I personally would like to think it through more thoroughly before making a decision on something that could be quite significant.
And in terms of your comment regarding, you know, all you know, tree ordinance or these ordinances such as the one here is brought in front of us and it is presented to us and we make a motion and we vote on it. Every one of those ordinances would be done in the same manner. So to create a worry against all of those others and how you go, you know, that language in each of those ordinances are detailed for us to approve or not approve.
The language is absolutely, and it's by charter, every ordinance has to be approved. But once the ordinance is in place, most of the ordinances, the authority then comes out of the council. In other words, my point was, if there's a violation of the tree ordinance and somebody wants to enforce it, they don't come back to council to say, is this a violation of the ordinance or should this particular tree be trimmed? Right.
But that's not what we're asking in this instance. Right? That's not an example of what we're asking. What we're asking in this instance is that in the environment where you have a building, a large building, 10,000 square feet or more, and before they're given a permit, that they just come to council so that we can have a consideration for such a large building at 75 years or older, so that we can look to protect any historical reference to it or pieces to it in the same way that they do in the farms. And from what we heard from Terry, we did not hear of any legal issues in the farms.
The farms does it different though. The farms doesn't have it in the demo ordinance. The farms has an ordinance that covers a historical committee that's appointed by the mayor that then makes those evaluations. It is not part of the farms demo ordinance. So what I'm suggesting is a model like the farms. From a legal perspective, I would prefer not to strip the council of the authority to do that, but not to do it in the demo ordinance. But you can do it.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Wiener.
I'd like to make a motion to table the amendments to ordinance 231 and then return to the vote on the ordinance itself.
No.
I don't think, hold on, I gotta double check. I'm not sure you can table it.
All right.
We can vote on that motion. Call the question. Are you calling the question?
I'll call the question.
Okay, any other discussion? Or actually, if the question is called, there is no more discussion, right, City Attorney?
If the question has been called, correct.
Okay, so the question is called. Clerk, can you please call the roll on the motion to require buildings older than 75 years in the community and greater than 10,000 square feet that are subject to demolition, that there must be council review in order for that to occur?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner,
No.
Gallagher,
I'm not sure.
Can you vote on your
I'm
amendment?
not sure if I understand.
Yeah,
We're
so
voting
that
for
it's
your
clear.
motion.
You made the amendment. The amendment was seconded. We had discussion. Now we're voting on that amendment. So a yes vote means that amendment passes, and then we would vote on the ordinance with the amendment. A no vote means you vote against the amendment.
Okay, yes.
Caulfield,
No.
Wiener,
No.
Mellon.
No.
McMillan,
Yes.
and Mayor Hodges.
No. Motion fails to amend as noted. We now go back to the original ordinance, and a motion would be in order to get that on the table.
So one question.
And then we can discuss.
Can Councilman Wiener make his motion
table
now?
his motion? Yes.
Would that be acceptable? So we
No,
can-
No, he wasn't
I
tabling.
wasn't tabling the ordinance. I was-
I'd like to
No,
make a
no, no,
motion to
tabling the
table it.
discussion.
One moment. I'm sorry. Councilmember Wiener, you were first. You didn't have anything?
If anything, I'll make a motion to approve the amendment as received, as read to us.
The ordinance.
Ordinance.
Okay.
Right. Let me restate that. I am making a motion for the ordinance.
There's already a motion on the
Yeah,
table.
okay, that's no problem.
We don't need a second.
I don't.
There had to have been a motion on the table to propose an amendment.
Just also,
So there was the motion and then the
Went
motion.
right into discussion after.
Yeah, I don't think there was.
So I made a motion.
Oh,
that's
did
not
we
in
not?
order.
No, there was no motion on the.
Oh,
table.
there should have been if we were gonna have it.
Gallagher and Marty made the amendment.
that I was saying.
Oh,
Okay.
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 Thank you.
All right, so how do we get back in order?
Now we need a motion to, we should have had the motion initially, but now we need a motion on
The actual
the
ordinance.
actual.
Motion to approve ordinance 231.
Second.
Second by, a motion by Wiener, seconded by Rellin to approve ordinance number 231, demolition. Any discussion? Councilmember Rellin?
Following up on what Councilmember Gallagher said, I think it's a good idea to have the historical commission reviewing some of these, or all of them, I guess, any demolitions. We've had some houses demoed that I wish would have come to council first, because it's a shame that the entire city loses when we demo a house and put up a parking lot. So I would like to add maybe to next month's agenda an discussion item about the historical commission. And I open up the table for any other discussion or extend the time.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I like the idea of kind of going with what the farms has. I mean, there are a lot of historical buildings around here, historical meaning. We don't have to set a statewide historical society. We can do that as a body here. You know, we determine it's historical for the city. I think what you're proposing, I agree with in that premise. I mean, the demo ordinance to me is a demo ordinance, but I would bring that up in new business, great, kind of like what the farms is doing, that way we can have a discussion about that.
Yeah, and don't misconstrue, but said I'm open to this conversation. I think it's worthwhile. I think we can do something with this, but unintended consequences, that's number one with me, anything that we do. So I'd like to deal with this ordinance, and then we can approach a possible other ordinance or amendment to. So.
Yes, Mr.
I
McMillan.
think the historical value is the key. And what Councilmember Gallagher is proposing here gives us that look before something gets torn down. So I think that's a good idea. To create another commission is tough. I mean, we have so many commissions at Grosse Pointe Park. When you look at how busy everybody is on this council and all the people that volunteer their time, to add another thing is difficult, because how many houses do we get torn down in a year that are 75 years old and 10,000 square? Not many, right?
Or buildings, which is why.
Very few. So it's not like to create another commission is just more work to do what? That's why you use us. That's number one. Number two, I'd like to propose in this amendment, I know it's a goofy thing, but we have 3 days to give somebody to tear something down. Well, 3 days thinking about it, I'm thinking it should be at least a week or two. What happens if someone's on vacation? All of a sudden they get a notice in the mail that their next door neighbor's house is getting torn down, and you got pools and whatever else you have in your backyard. I think that should be amended as well.
City Attorney or City Manager, do you want to speak to that?
I mean, I don't have a lead. That's up to you guys if you want to make an amendment.
It's a 72-hour notice.
Yeah, it's a 72-hour notice right there. And I know typically when, you know, working with contractors, they give you a couple days advance notice. I would recommend if we were to do so, probably no more than a week notice.
That's
So
better.
we could say like 5 day, you know, 5 business days or, you know, something to that aspect.
It's better because if someone's gone for the weekend or
Yeah.
whatever, they come back and all of a sudden they've got a situation with whatever they have in their backyard. And so I would be okay with 5 to 7 days. 7 days is easy, but.
Question to piggyback on Councilmember McMillan. So when they submit their permit or application to demo, that doesn't mean they're gonna demo in 3 days. Right? There's still a long list they have to go through.
There's still a long
Yeah.
checklist they gotta
So
go through.
Can we
They have
change,
to check.
can we change this as soon as they apply, that we can let people know that this is up for a demolition question?
The only thing I.
Go ahead. I will have other questions.
I'd say, the only thing I would caution on that is, I could, if I had a 10,000 foot structure, I could go and say, hey, I want to tear this down, I'm applying for permit, pay the fee. And now all of a sudden I can't get bonded. I don't have insurance, and this drags through.
Or maybe once it gets approved.
Could be. I mean,
It
once
still
it's
could be a
approved.
month before they demo.
Right.
That's a question for you. Maybe we can,
Yeah.
and then my whole point of this was to have a discussion on this. We don't need to have the discussion today, but these questions are pretty good.
Yeah, Warren.
Is the concern with the notice requirements? You mentioned permit approval. The language here says if permit is approved, then the notice requirement is triggered. So there is still some lead time from when the permit is submitted to when it's actually approved. So just, I want, in case that was what the issue was, I want to.
Initially it was an application, but they bring up good points. It would be on an approval, but.
I think, Marty, what you're talking about, your concern is the time from when they get the approval. So once they get that approval, they have 3 days to notice. And I think your concern, if I'm understanding correctly, is that that may be a too small of amount of time.
Yeah.
People are in the summer away on vacation, they may not get their mail, et cetera. This is your concern.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna give benefit of the doubt to Warren to turn into chairman at Caulfield. I mean, I'm sure these numbers aren't arbitrary, and I'm gonna give deference to you guys if you guys feel like these numbers are appropriate, or if you think it needs to be reworked. Will you give us some guidance? I mean, I basically I did some research on other cities as well. This seems in line, so I don't have a problem with voting on this now, unless again the people who have their fingers on this have any aversion to it, because I don't want to just I don't like arbitrarily putting numbers out.
City attorney or assistant, excuse me, city manager, assistant city manager, how do you feel about the number of days for notice requirements?
As Councilmember Wiener did say, it is about the average that communities do enact for at least 3 days. And so, administratively, what the building department offices could enact is that, we actually issued out in 5 days. However, with compliance, it is 72 in there. Or if the body elects to, codify that, we could just amend it to say 5 days. And I don't think our building department would have an issue if we did 5 days. I think it's something that easily we can do. And the point of summer and a couple, vacations and that, I know there's been a couple of cases. So,
well, and the only comment I'll make is I think this intention of 72 hours is that people are going to be notified well before that the building's coming down. It's just that when the demolition guy is pulling the trucks up, we have to let them know that this is happening in 3 days, like we told you about.
It's really
not, we're just gonna.
to prevent starting,
Yeah.
starting with nobody knowing.
Right.
There's a long process. They have to have a demolition plan. So there will be opportunities for people to interject themselves if they're concerned about the demolition itself. The 72 hours is, we're at the end of the process. It's coming down, but before you can start, you've got to put the neighbors on notice. And 72 was consistent with what we've seen.
Yeah.
So if we do have a motion on the table to approve the ordinance as it stands, and somebody wanted to make a motion to amend, that would be the appropriate
If they want to
procedure.
amend that motion.
I'll second it.
Right? So somebody's got to make a motion. Are you making a
I'm making a
motion?
motion to amend. Yeah.
To what? To
5 days.
To 5 days. I'll go 5 business days. Let's say 5 business days. Is that okay?
Is there a second?
Yeah.
I second.
Seconded by Gallagher. Any discussion?
Only discussion, Jake, we don't have to we can put that, rewrite it as 5 days, approve it as is with the 5 days.
If the amendment is approved, it'll get written in, and then you guys can approve it with the amendment, and we'll just change it before we publish it and everything else.
Okay, any other discussion? Councilmember Rowan.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Tom. Thanks, Warren. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Erica. Thanks, Jake. This is something that I've been asking for a couple of years now, and you guys did a really, really good job.
Councilmember Gallagher too was very
Councilmember
instrumental.
Gallagher, thank you for this. I appreciate all this work. And as we said, it's long overdue. And we're just going to go through these ordinances and bring them up to date. So it's really good work. I appreciate it. And I'm happy as is 5 days now.
So then I'm just gonna ask real quick. Do you see any reservation for moving to 3 days to 5 days?
From a legal standpoint, I do not.
You comfortable with it?
I don't think it's necessary, but I understand the support and the consensus of council. Whatever the law is, we'll make sure we enforce it on the other side.
So we got to vote. We have to vote on the amendment.
Yes, call the question.
Okay, so we're calling the question. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Yes. Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Mullen.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, the amendment to amend the notice requirements from 3 days to 5 days has been approved, which now brings us back to the original motion to approve ordinance number 231. The question has been called. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher. Yes. Caulfield.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Mullen.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes. Motion carries. We now have a new demolition ordinance number 231. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work. Mr. Rossi, thank you. You can take a load off. Next on the agenda is the MOU St. Clair, the MOU with St. Clair Montefiore. City Manager Seidlin, would you like to lead us through this portion of the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hodges. So our council before you tonight is a memorandum of agreement between the city of Grosse Pointe Park, the Archdiocese of Detroit, and the St. Clair Montefiore Parish. So the city and St. Clair have engaged in an effort to update our water main infrastructure while the church intends to reconstruct its parking lot and improve stormwater efficiency in the area. The project engineer hired by St. Clair Montefiore, Wade Trim, has indicated the design work has been completed and the city anticipates construction. Drawings will be received within the next few weeks for our review, which will then be reviewed by Nancy and Patrick and the OHM advisors. The church intends to advance the construction in the summer of 2022 as part of the city. We'll cover the costs of for public water main replacement, which an estimate by OHM, and Nancy correct me later, is about $100,000. Council will be presented with documentation that vacates the Fenway Street right-of-way at Autobahn and alleyways. At the same time, new easements for the existing sanitary, sewer, and new public water main will be created with Eagle requirements. And so this is something that is it's a competitive bid process. St. Clair Montefiore has hired Wade Trim, who is their engineer of record. They will go out for bid with the specifications. Grosse Pointe Parkland will have time to review those bid specs, provide comment back and forth, and as part of it, it's a public bid opening. So those bids will be public for review and up to this. This is something that I think will be great, seeing this partnership between the city and also the church of working together, improving infrastructure. Approximately, by removing this parking lot from the sanitary system, is about 0.6 acres. So that's another step in trying to reduce our sanitary flow to our sewer station. So this is just another small step that will assist us. And St. Clair Montefiore, I want to thank them and their engineers and their group working with the city. They're great partners, working with Mr. Brennan and Mr. Rothi and our engineering team at OHM. So I would ask council to consider approving this memorandum of agreement. Happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the memorandum.
Moved by McMillan, seconded by Wiener to approve the memorandum of understanding with St. Clair Montefiore and the Archdiocese of Detroit. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to follow up with City Manager Seisman said this is a win-win. I mean, this is precisely the kind of private-public infrastructure improvement we've been talking about, the water main replacement, reducing inflow. This is exactly the sort of thing that we want to see. And hopefully this will be a bit of a benchmark for others within the community. And we want to work on all this, and we're happy to have partners to do it. So
that's great.
And I want to thank the city attorney's office too. OHM assisted us with that rough draft, and then we had to get the legal team involved as well. Lawyers, you got to get involved, and so I appreciate Jake for all your hard work on this as well. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Gallagher.
Thank you very much. So just coming back to this, I agree. This is really good stuff. I don't win-win.
Yeah.
So I a question around the budget. Like you said, it was in the water and sewer fund already in there, and it's under capital improvement.
It's not under, so in the budget that was just approved under 401, you didn't see a line item under there for, you know, St. Clair water main. However, there are water sewer funds that are available for projects such as these with water sewer, or in addition to, let's say, as I know Councilmember Raylan talked about it too, if OHM needs to come back for more money on the sewer cleaning, we can also charge that out of water sewer. We also do have reserves that we can use if need be, you know, if there's other larger capital projects that, you know, come forth to this body.
Excellent. And to that point, because as Councilmember Wiener mentioned, how it is a win-win. We'd like to see more of this type of work.
Right.
Will we be doing the same type of work with St. Ambrose, as we understand they're working with their parking lot and looking to move water out of their system? I know there's a lot of work.
So we actually had a really good discussion with St. Ambrose. I met with Father Tim Pelk and also the Archdiocese too, and we discussed you know, the property on site. We discussed the SCOP Center as well, because there was certainly some concern on the SCOP Center that, you know, are they going to be impacting St. Ambrose? And what, you know, our engineers have determined they will not. They'll actually help enhance the area right now because there's actually a sanitary manhole over at the DPW that, you know, is contributing, and that's going to be closed off, you know, as part of the site. In addition to, you've got some of the bioswales and other, you know, area around the parking lots that they're adding to. And then looking at the actual parking lot of St. Ambrose that we have found, there's actually a large infrastructure that does not service Grosse Pointe Park, but it's called the Fox Creek Barrel. And so this is a large barrel that transects through our community. And there's actually a manhole in their parking lot that dumps into this Fox Creek Barrel. So simple low-hanging fruit suggestion for St. Ambrose is that they actually would be able to close off that manhole so that you don't have extra infiltration coming in during extreme storm events, which may have exacerbated St. Ambrose's case in that area where, you know, you get all the water rising. You also now have in that area the Fox Creek Barrel. So that's something that's going to help them out. And working with their contractors as well, the city building department, looking at what are some other areas that they can try and mitigate, you know, for other future rain events. And so working with Father Tim, we're continuing that dialogue, but so far, I think there's some very low cost options that can help out St. Ambrose.
Oh, good. So that's great. We may not have to get into a memorandum of understanding with them, with the potential solutions in place, but
correct.
The good news is the dialogue are happening.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, I don't expect any, you know, again, you never know, but right now I don't expect any capital costs that, you know, we'd enter an agreement. And I know, you know, the Scott Center certainly wants to work well with its neighbors in St. Ambrose and also the city of Grosse Pointe Park, that if there is opportunities that we can all assist each other and work on, we will do that.
Building another triangle. Right? Which would be great. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Brenner.
Yes.
Gallagher.
Yes.
Caulfield.
Yes.
Wiener.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
McMillan.
Yes.
And Mayor Hodges.
Yes, motion carries. We have an approved MOU with St. Clair of Montefalco and the Archdiocese of Detroit. Thank you to all involved in that, which moves us into council comment. Yes, Mr. Wiener.
I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but I want to once again reiterate, you know, spring is here, weather's turning nice, and we're all very aware of, you know, what happened last year. I just want to reiterate that the city is working very diligently to try to do everything it can to shore up our systems as much as possible. Again, work has been great. I really want to call out and say thank you to DPW. They've been just, you know, diligently working on our systems, doing as much as they could, and the city manager and the rest of the council. Again, this is also, I want to say thank you to all the residents who've taken the time to work on their own homes, to contact the city regarding disconnects. Again, every little bit helps, and we're making tremendous progress. And I promise you, we will not let off the gas. We're going to keep working on this, and then again, give you the best infrastructure we possibly can. So thank you to everybody who's been engaged. If you haven't yet, please pick up the phone and send an email to council or to DPW. We'll try to provide you any assistance we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Beer. Other comments? Yes, Mr. Rowland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention that Pierce Middle School will be having an international festival on May 26th. Start at 6 p.m. It's we've also invited Defer and Mayor to be a part of this, so it should be a pretty big event. We have a mariachi band coming. We used to do this at Trombley, as the Trombley families here know. It was pretty successful there. We moved it to Pierce. I don't think we did it last year. 3 years ago. Yeah, so we had it there in the gym and it was still pretty fun. It was very minimally advertised. We're trying to advertise a little more and making it bigger. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Pierce PTO.
Thank you. Mr. McMillan?
Just so everybody knows, our mayor represented our city very well at the opening day. She threw out the opening day first pitch, and I was there, and it was a strike. Right.
Good. I didn't murder
job.
anybody. And the catcher actually caught. My husband thinks I did it underhand. I'm like, no, I did not.
That's a
do it
real
underhand. Any other comments? Just to quickly highlight a few things that have happened in the last month. One we already heard about tonight, which is a Respect for Law breakfast, which I think is very important. And would like to again laud Officer Michael O'Brien and Detective Ryan Wilmer on their accomplishments. There was also a breakfast at the Helm where we learned more about the services that are available to our senior citizens. So Councilmember Rowland, they'll be great partners as we look to reach the senior community more readily. And it certainly is good to see that our CDBG PATS dollars are in good hands. And then as Mr. McMillan just highlighted, there was the Grosse Pointe Park Little League opening day. Everybody survived it, but Marty, you should be very happy about what you've accomplished there. Mr. Howlett, I know you've been, your family's participated in Caulfield, Brenner. We've all touched on it. And I think I said that day that it's not the sparkly diamonds on our fingers that are the real gems in the community. It's the diamonds beneath our feet because of all that the Little League does to be that connective tissue. So thank you, Mr. McMillan, and everybody who's been part of that. Then there was also a cross-border bio blitz and cleanup on Saturday, April 30th that we were able to do in partnership with our Detroit teammates. And then the pièce de résistance, Member Brenner, was when I received an invitation from President Brenner of the Pierce National Junior Honor Society to deliver remarks at their induction ceremony last week. And it was a real honor to do that and real testimony again to what makes this community great, which is good solid schools and teachers and administrators. And that night in particular, it was Andrea Doherty and Principal Sarah Dirksey, and certainly the engaged parents that filled the room and the brilliant young people like Isaac. So that was a special time as well. And then, so clearly we have a lot to be proud of. And then I think it's important too, just to speak briefly tonight to a matter that has been playing out on social media regarding the precinct locations and what has been done there. And I want the community to know that it is in good hands and that the decisions that are being made are well conceived and in the best interest of all, and that this body is listening and listening closely as it relates to this precinct consolidation. So just to quickly point out, I did I think we all have talked with our administration and are confident that all of the various factors have been considered as we've walked through this process. And the end result of that analysis is that the outcomes or the goal is to provide a great voting experience for all voters. And when keeping that goal in mind, things like whether or not the parks will be open and easily accessible, eliminating the uncertainty of the school location, cost and staff efficiencies, and the need to avoid costs like mailing notices regularly, access for non-resident campaign volunteers, overflow parking facilities, handicap parking facilities, the 100-foot rule, having potential to increase voter engagement because there's so many people going to the parks anyway. It's a chance to showcase our parks. Certainly considered thoroughly other locations like City Hall, and for various reasons they do not work. And again, no location is perfect. There are concerns with every location, but having worked so closely on these various issues, I think the bottom line is that this is the most effective and most efficient and best, most voter-minded way of moving forward with our elections. So I just wanted to make sure the community knew that all of these factors have been considered by our competent staff. And as always, Clerk Blayhut is certainly very skilled at leading elections and always willing to work with our community. So anytime you have questions, please email cityclerk@grossepointepark.org. And I assure you this amazing human will get right back to you and do whatever it takes to resolve any concerns that you might have. Because we are a very voter-minded community and we are committed to making sure that that experience is the best that it can be. So with that, if there's not anybody else who might have a council comment, we'll move to the final public comment for non-agenda items. All right, moving into that public comment. Again, we look forward to hearing your your comments. You do have 3 minutes to speak. I ask that you just approach the podium. I think the hand back here went up first, so welcome.
Thank you. Mary Rouleau, Lake Point. I'm offering these comments on behalf of myself and the following residents: Tricia Ennis, Steve Wilder, Jack and Liz Blaskowitz, Jamie Slayton, Nancy Cameron-Wilden, Roger Clark, and Valerie St. John. We ask this council to use defer that the voting location for precincts 5 and 6, like it has been in the past. It's our understanding that there's no physical reason it can't be used. Moving to Windmill Point is problematic for at least 3 reasons. Number 1, the disparate impact it will have on voters in these precincts, particularly the 5th. The precinct, which is the most diverse, contains the most rentals, is the least wealthy, and the least likely to have cars. Number 2, proof of residence at the gatehouse is a problem. As you know, voters do not have to show ID to vote. They can sign an affidavit. Number 3, given the physical setup, it will be difficult, if not impossible, for candidates to greet voters and comply with the 100-foot rule. Further, the process here is very troubling, raising many questions. Why was this not vetted with the public before the decision was made and adopted? Was there a meeting of the Election Commission? If so, was there public notice of it or minutes from the meeting? How is community engagement being defined by this council? What exactly are the efficiencies that are mentioned as the reason for the move? And in any event, are efficiencies more important than access to the vote? This action is particularly tone deaf, given well-publicized efforts in Lansing to restrict access to the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rouleau. Mr. Mazur?
Al Mazur, 30 Point Park Place. I just wanted to answer Councilperson Caulfield's question about the, he was referring to people with permission on our petition. Sally and Peter Wharton, who own 80 Point Park Place. They have grandchildren in the park and also own some property in the park, rental property. They also reside in South Dakota, and they are in the process of selling some commercial property. They were unable to be in town, and they gave us permission to sign their names on the petition. The other couple, Lucy and John Prost, purchased Lena Carlisle's unit, number 90. And the day they closed, they moved out, they went down to Florida on vacation. And that came in preparation to sell their home on Pemberton. So we got a hold of them, and they also, get permission, for their, they wanted their names on the petition.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Other comments this evening? Yes.
Hello, elected officials. My name is Sangeeta. I live on Beaconsfield in the 5th precinct. So in the 2018 election, I worked with the ACLU to garner support for a ballot initiative to protect Michigan voting rights. That ballot passed with 70% of the vote. In 2020, I worked for the Michigan Secretary of State to monitor polling stations in Detroit to make sure they were compliant with state and federal regulations. To say the least, I'm very passionate about voting rights and protecting them, as every American citizen should be. By moving my polling station 35 minutes away, which is how long it takes to walk from Pierce to Windmill Point, you are restricting my accessibility to vote and restricting the accessibility of my neighbors. And on its face, it seems like you are targeting our most marginalized community, but maybe it's naive of me. I don't think that was the intention of the city council. So I ask, please reconsider this decision. And I don't know why I'm nervous. You all work for me, but this is my first comment, so bear with me. I just ask that you reconsider this decision that the public had no input on, and really think about the impact it's going to have on your constituents, the most vulnerable. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rowan. Yes, Ms. Pigeon. I'm sorry, Ms. Pigeon.
Thank you.
Oh, one moment. We've got Ms. Pigeon ahead of you.
Jen, I live on the 1100 block of Lake Point, and thank you for having me here again. I'm also here to express my deep concern about the decision to move voting from Defer Elementary and City Hall to Windmill Point Park. I believe this will suppress votes, making it something, you know, I always worry about our reputation, right? I don't think our city needs to add that to its already long list of offenses towards people of color and other residents who will be disenfranchised by that decision. It will harm our city's reputation, and it'll reflect very poorly on your leadership. By reducing access to the vote to those privileged enough to own vehicles, the move of all voting to Windmill Point Park, which is inaccessible by bus and difficult to get to for those who are unable to walk those long blocks from Kirchville or Jefferson. This decision solidifies our city's unfortunate connections to other voter suppression efforts in the state, activities that have all attracted the interest of national media. As pointed out by other residents in their shared comment, this decision will be felt particularly hard in the 5th precinct, the most diverse in our city, and the precinct that contains, as Ms. Rouleau said, the highest number of rentals, is the least affluent, and which represents Grosse Pointe Park residents less likely to have cars or be able to access transportation to the park. It will also make it difficult, if not impossible, for candidates to comply with that 100-foot rule. I think this is a bad choice that demonstrates a large disconnect between you and your constituents, particularly those in my beloved, diverse, and more conservative, more progressive neighborhood. Simply, it's heartbreaking because it looks like an attempt to suppress votes, and it smells like an attempt to suppress votes. And it's therefore something anyone with a conscience must push back against. Please restore the voting location at Defer, and be sure to publicize all GPP provided transportation options broadly for the 2022 midterm election.
Thank you, Ms. David. Mr. Mazur, I believe you had a minute or so left in your time allotment. If you'd like to use it, you can just approach the podium.
This issue, would these residents not be able to vote absentee?
Yeah, you can.
Yes. So I think maybe that would be a thing to publicize in that regard so that they know how they can go about getting it. I remember in the 80s, I used to spend a lot of hours at Kroger. I was voting absentee then because there was a stipulation if you're outside of the city and outside of the city almost all those election days. So I voted absentee then. So hopefully there's some way of getting it out in the communicator, maybe even in the Grosse Pointe News.
Thank you.
Everybody voting.
Thank you. Ms. White, yes, welcome.
Good evening, Michelle White, 1049 Yorkshire. This is also my first time ever addressing you. I have grave concerns about your decision to move voting to Windmill Point. The others before me really said it, so all of my concerns very eloquently. But one of my greatest concerns has to do with the idea that should you decide to leave it at Windmill Point, which I hope you don't, if you do decide to do that, we have concerns with entering the park. Anyone in our state can vote by affidavit. They can vote by if they come to the polling place, they look in their pockets, they don't have their ID, or even beforehand they say I don't have an ID and I want to vote. They can vote just by signing their name in front of an election official. If there is somebody even standing at the gatehouse, okay, standing at the gatehouse, in my opinion, that will put a chill on some people. Maybe they've lost their ID, they feel embarrassed that they don't know where their ID is, they just feel awkward about the whole situation. Whatever it is, voting must take place at a public place, and the fact that you would even have somebody stand at the gate, which I'm imagining is how we're thinking of doing it, based on the fact that the email that came out, the email said Grosse Pointe Park residents will not have to show park, they can vote with or without park ID. And
I have to say, or they can enter the park with or without park ID.
Without park passes.
Without park passes, I'm sorry, you're right,
Okay,
without
without
park,
their
with
ID.
or Grosse Pointe Park, it says in the email, Grosse Pointe Park residents can enter with or without their park passes, right? Okay, how are you gonna determine whether somebody is a Grosse Pointe Park resident without checking some sort of ID? Without either looking at their ID or looking at a mortgage statement or looking at a utility bill? I don't know how you're gonna do it. So it has to be public. It has to be open to the public. Otherwise, you're creating a barrier to voting. That is it. I mean, that is it. I also echo the other concerns about how far away it is in the far off corner of our community. Those have all been said before. And finally, if I can say, is I know what you did when you made this decision. I know it was legal, but it wasn't. Even if something is legal, it's not the best. It's not always the best choice. Sometimes it's just good to talk to all of us and ask before you make a decision like this. I think if we had been talked to ahead of time, maybe all this uproar could have been avoided. You could have heard from some of the other minds in the community. They would have helped inform you. But I really think we have to have the Windmill Point public, open to the public no matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Swipe. Yes. Yes, Mr. Gill.
John Callis, Nottingham. You can call me Jack. I agree with the speakers who stood here before me that this is a bad idea. Geographically, it's a bad idea because the center of the population are not in the corner of our city. They're at the school districts. So, Mayor, with all respect, I have to ask you to tell me how you were thinking of the voters when you all folks decided to make this change without input. It seems to me that it's not in the voters' best interest. So I hope you change your mind.
Thank you for coming tonight. Anybody else who would like to be heard? Okay, we will close the final public comment of the evening, which puts us into adjournment, if in fact that is your will.
Motion to adjourn.
Moved by Relland, is there a second? By Gallagher to adjourn at 9:36. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes.
Gallagher? Yes. Caulfield?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.